This is Adam Graham from Pretty Much the Present, bringing you a week of old-time radio podcasts. These episodes were originally released back in 2011, and we're releasing them here pretty much as is, with only some extraneous bits such as the opening from all of the episodes after the first episode removed. Because these are old, it should be noted that any offers or promotions mentioned in the episode may not be valid unless they're currently mentioned on the Great Detectives website. Here now is a week of old-time radio detective podcast. Welcome to the Great Detectives of Old Time Radio. From Boise, Idaho, this is your host, Adam Graham. If you have a comment, email it to me, box13@greatdetectives.net. Become one of our friends on Facebook, facebook.com/radio detectives, and give us a call, 208-991-4783, and be sure to fill out our listener survey, survey.greatdetectives.net. This episode of the Great Detectives of Old Time Radio is brought to you by the faithful support of our great listeners. Thank you so much. Well, as I mentioned last week, we're skipping pretty far ahead just because of lost episodes. We had previously 19 weeks straight of having all the episodes available, and that was followed by 19 weeks of lost episodes. And I'll read off the titles after the show, because some of them sounded pretty interesting. But this particular episode comes from July 8th, 1952. It's the episode The Long Way Home. So enjoy.
Gargan stars as Barrie Craig, confidential investigator.
It's a sad fact, but very few murderers ever amount to anything. They're in such a killing profession, and when they come to the end of their rope, there's always a noose attached to it.
The National Broadcasting Company presents William Gargan in another transcribed drama of mystery and adventure with America's #1 detective, Barrie Craig, confidential investigator.
Barrie Craig speaking. Ever noticed the fact that the work a man does leaves its mark on him? 9 times out of 10, you can spot a doctor, a lawyer, a butcher, a baker half a block away. I wonder what a confidential investigator looks like. He looks like me. I figured the above philosophy represented a good day's work. The shadows were creeping along Madison Avenue, and I got out of the office. And I locked the door behind me. Maybe I could fool a burglar into thinking I had something worth stealing. I hoped I wasn't waking Jake. A night elevator man needs his sleep. Something was wrong. He'd started the elevator up almost before I'd finished pushing the buzzer. You can spoil tenants awful fast that way. Jake?
Hey.
You suffering from insomnia?
No.
You've been reading a book on how to get ahead in the world?
No.
Well, stop chattering and let's get started. You got the door shut fine. Now we're supposed to go down.
Oh, glad you reminded me.
They didn't have any elevators down on your farm in Vermont.
No.
It figures.
No office buildings, neither.
That figures, too.
No shiny cars, no blondes.
What did you do during the long winter evenings?
Decided to leave the farm, Mr. Craig.
Well, right about now is when you open the elevator door.
Ain't sure I should.
Why?
Tain't the farm.
Meaning, we've got elevators, office buildings, shiny cars, and a blonde?
Yep.
I'm not afraid of blondes.
Back in Vermont, it was her pop usually carried the gun.
But here?
She's carrying it.
Must be a strain on her. Open up, Jake.
Yep.
Where'd you hide her?
The shiny car.
Outside?
That's the one.
Oh, I like 'em that shape. Long, rounded, smooth.
You mean the car?
Oh, sure. As far as the blonde goes, there's not a wrinkle or a gun on her.
Her bag.
Oh,
I see it when she powdered her nose.
well, maybe it's a trick cigarette case.
No.
She could be waiting for somebody else.
Nobody else in the building.
Then I'd better not keep her waiting. After all, you can only die once.
Once is enough.
Don't remind me. Besides, blondes rarely have any reason to shoot me.
Boasting?
Just being wistful. Good night, Jake.
Night, Mr. Craig.
Well, been waiting long?
Not very,
Beautiful night.
isn't it?
The name's Craig.
I know.
Well, Jake could be wrong.
Who's Jake?
The night man.
He wasn't wrong.
Then I get in?
Please.
Okay. Well, the name's still Craig.
I'm Mona Walsh.
Mrs. Walsh?
Mrs. Walsh.
How's Mr. Walsh?
That's why I was waiting for you.
We're going to see him?
I hope not.
I could think of an easy explanation. Mona Walsh had seen me, had been carried away by my rugged physique and my mildly scrambled features, and was now carrying me off to a tryst among the pines, or maybe the maples. It was too easy an explanation, and it didn't include the gun. We're going someplace or just cruising?
I'm trying to find words, the best way to tell you.
I've been a confidential investigator for quite a while. You don't have to find the best way.
My husband isn't Mr. Walsh. He's Ted Walsh.
Well, what difference is that? Wait a minute. Ted Walsh?
That's right. The Ted Walsh.
If I remember my newspaper headlines correctly, he's killed a few men here and there.
Yes.
His last little effort was robbing a bank someplace in Massachusetts.
And killing a guard.
And killing a guard. Nice guy.
I didn't know what he was when I married him. You probably won't believe that.
If you turn out to be a client of mine, I'll have to believe it.
But it's true. I didn't know until just recently. When I found out, I left him. Came here to New York.
Fair enough. You're in the clear. What's bothering you?
Ted's in New York, too.
New York's a big place.
Ted's terribly in love with me. He came here for only one reason.
You could keep your door locked.
Oh, please don't joke.
I wasn't joking. Keep your door locked and your telephone handy. The police would be glad to remove him from your doorstep.
Ted would spot them. Then he'd know I told the police about him. He'd get away from them. He's done it before. He'd kill me.
Possible.
But if you watched for him, he wouldn't spot you. Then, as soon as he came, you carry a gun, don't you?
I've got a license, too.
Well, then everything would be all right, wouldn't it?
Might be. There'd be a fee.
I thought perhaps 500.
Well, that's too high. I generally get 50 a day in expenses.
Well, that doesn't seem enough.
I run a one-price shop.
Well, all right.
This your place?
Yes.
Well, let's get out. Small house. Stay there alone?
Yes.
I can see why you'd worry.
I feel nervous. It's exposed, standing around like...
Well, we'll try the house. I'd better go in with you.
Of course.
In case he's a little early.
Oh, I hadn't thought of...
Don't get excited. I'm probably too careful. But we'll check anyway. Got your key?
Oh, here.
Over to the side, huh?
What?
The lamppost out front throws some light. The house is dark. You'd make a nice target.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. So far, fine. Light switch near the door?
To the left, on the way inside.
Okay, stay where you are. Clear enough. Come on in. Got a latch on it? Uh-huh. Good. Rest of the house now. I feel like a termite inspector. Except termites don't kill, do they? Mr. Walsh was not at home. Mrs. Walsh felt good about it. I didn't have time to get philosophical about marriage. I checked the back of the house for good measure. A high fence took care of the garden and the back door. It was only the front door to worry about. You're alone in the house, Mrs. Walsh.
Yes.
When I shut this door behind me, you lock it.
Of course.
Then if your husband comes calling,
I'll be safe.
you won't have to use that gun you're carrying around anyway.
You'll be out front someplace?
Yeah. The nearest convenient doorway. I'll find one. It's one of the things you'll learn fast in my business. How to find convenient doorways. So long, Mrs. Walsh.
So long.
There was a small night light over the door. That was nice. It would light up Mr. Walsh neatly if he visited. I had my choice of 2 or 3 doorways from which I could watch the Walsh house and be close enough to have a clean shot at Ted Walsh. I passed them all up. I was looking for a phone, and I found one in a drugstore half a block away.
Lieutenant Rogers, homicide.
Barrie Craig here.
Aloof tonight, eh?
Watch those college words. People will think you're educated.
I am.
Tonight, you're not ashamed of being a college graduate, Lieutenant?
I'm all alone in the office. Nobody will ever find out.
I'll tell him, Trav.
Unless I do what?
No blackmail. I want some information, though. You might have it.
You flatter the department.
It's about Ted Walsh.
Walsh. We'd like some information about him, too. For example, where to get in touch with him.
I haven't got it. Trav, on that bank job he pulled in Massachusetts, was it a solo flight?
A bank job's never solo, especially one involving $60,000.
But Walsh was definitely in on it.
So definitely he killed a guard.
Thanks, Trav.
Hey, wait a minute. My curiosity's aroused.
Try a cold shower. Good night, Trav. That, for what it was worth, was that. I went back to Mrs. Walsh's little gray home in the West. It looked the same. I pushed the button.
Who is it?
Barrie Craig. Leave the door on the chain, but open it a crack, huh?
All right. What's the matter?
I've decided to throw up the job.
What?
Yeah, I'm resigning.
But I don't understand.
It's a clear saving of $50 for you.
Why are you...
Let's say the hours are too long, huh? Good night, Mrs. Walsh. She was saying something as I went down the walk and away from the house. I didn't bother listening. I had to drop her. You see, I always believe a client, and Mona Walsh, however beautiful, was a liar. But however much of a liar she was, Mona Walsh was beautiful. So I hung around in one of those convenient doorways. With me apparently off the job, she'd need somebody else to keep Ted Walsh away from her. There wasn't much time left either. She wouldn't take a chance trying to find another gullible private detective. I was interested in who she would find. It took maybe a half hour for my replacement to show up. He was an anti-doorway boy. He picked an alley. I thought he looked lonely, so I dropped in on him. Hello?
What? Hey, who?
The name's Craig, Barrie Craig.
What do you want?
I'm trying to find out what's special about this alley.
Nothing. I'm crazy about alleys, that's all.
You're sticking to that?
Sure.
Then...
Let's go.
Thought you'd be packing one.
What? You ain't got no right taking a guy's gun.
I'm a lot bigger than you are. Would you like to argue about it?
Well, there's a dame in that house. Ted Walsh's wife. She's kind of worried he might show.
She doesn't love him anymore?
Well, I wouldn't know nothing about that. The orders was he don't get to her.
What does he get? Never mind. Who's got all the big concern for Mona Walsh?
Oh, why don't you leave me alone? What's your angle?
Maybe I want to send your boss flowers because he's a humanitarian. Feed me a name.
I didn't tell you nothing, understand?
Of course.
It's Mr. Harold.
Harold?
Yeah, but remember, you didn't get it from me.
I'll remember. Here's your gun.
Oh, yeah.
I'm worried about Mona Walsh, too.
Oh, you don't have to worry about her. Nobody will get the jump on me again.
I hope not. So long. We start with the kid stuff. Snatch and run. Knock over a couple of small stores. Move up into the hot cars and cold decks. Go on to delivering boats a few seasons. Take over a few wheels. Buy a few debts, and you wind up being Mr. Harold. But by then you wear tailored suits and handmade shoes.
Now, what's the idea this hour?
Their name's Craig.
Oh, Craig. I've seen the face around. Wait a minute now. You a private eye?
Call it confidential investigator. Makes it seem more dignified.
Yeah, well, call it what you want, but get out of here.
Not until I see Harold.
Let's make it Mr. Harold, huh? And he ain't seeing you. You ain't the type that appeals to him.
He's seeing me.
You pushing your luck or something? When I say you don't see Mr. Harold, you don't see him.
So far, it's only your word.
It's more than a word.
Everybody's got one. Yours licensed?
No, you care. Keep pushing and you're a trespasser.
Gargan?
Yeah, Mr. Harold.
What's the trouble?
Yeah, I'm having words with a private eye who wants in.
Oh, indeed. Let him in, Bogan. I haven't seen one in years.
Okay.
Who knows? He may want to have his license renewed.
Not exactly. The name's Craig.
Bogan, put that gun away and leave us,
Okay, Mr. Harold.
Bogan is so impulsive.
A little crude, too, or haven't you noticed?
He doesn't polish easily.
It's getting late. What's half of $60,000, Harold?
$30,000.
That kind of money worth a death?
I haven't seen the latest quotations.
Ted Walsh knocked over a bank a couple of weeks ago, killed a guard, and collected $60,000.
An enterprising young man.
He had a little help. The way I figure, it was $30,000 for Ted, $30,000 for the help.
Seems equitable enough, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, but Harold, how do you share the debt? Harold needed a little time. I let him have it. The room was nice. Good furniture, oak paneling on the walls. Small Renoir hung just where the light would hit it in the morning. A girl brushing her hair before a mirror. She looked like someone I'd seen, and for a minute I couldn't remember where. She looked like the girl who'd married Ted Walsh.
You must have some interest in the rather sordid subject of Ted Walsh and his peccadillos. Why?
Mona Walsh. She tried to hire me.
She's a lovely girl. You wouldn't hire?
She lied to me.
Sad.
She wanted me to protect her against her husband. She'd heard he was here in New York. She didn't tell me who told her. Why?
I really couldn't say.
She wanted me to stake out in front of her house. So when Walsh got there, I'd take him. But, Harold, how would Ted Walsh have found her house? She wouldn't have told him, not if she was really afraid of him.
Isn't all this Mona Walsh's problem?
No, Ted Walsh alive gets half of the $60,000. Ted Walsh dead gets a mouthful of dust in Potter's Field.
How picturesque.
The problem is how to kill Ted Walsh without annoying the police. The answer is hire a private detective, let Ted Walsh know where his lovely wife is, and he heads for her. The private detective kills him. All nice and legal.
I suppose it would be.
Harold, you picked me to kill Ted Walsh for you.
You're ruining my tie.
Sorry, I have trouble with my temper sometimes. I don't like being a hired gun, Harold.
You turned the job down, didn't you? What more do you want?
I don't know. Maybe I'm worried because a liar is so lovely. I got out of there. I could have gone to lots of other places after that, but I didn't. I went back to my office and sat. I didn't have any doubts. Harold had set up Mona Walsh as a decoy. When I cried quits, one of his men moved in to protect her. Harold wanted Ted Walsh dead so he could hold on to all of the $60,000. And maybe Mona Walsh, too. It was an idea I didn't enjoy. I stopped having it. I was waiting without knowing what I was waiting for. I thought it might be nice if I had a Renoir to hang next to the dusty license on the wall. Then I thought of the people and the motives that kept me in business. I decided the Renoir wouldn't fit. The hours dragged by, and I stopped kidding myself. Nobody phoned. Nobody would phone. I'd get up and go home and go to sleep. I got up, but I didn't go home. The street in front of Mona Walsh's house was empty and cold. The lights in Mona Walsh's house were out. And the boy in the alley wasn't there anymore. I was wrong. I hadn't gone deep enough. The alley closed in on me, and then I found him. He was propped up against the wall, his legs straight out before him, his head slumped down over his chest. He might have been brooding about the blood that had poured out of that chest if he hadn't been so completely dead. I left him there. He'd keep. He'd been dead some little while. Somebody had shot him. It got past him into Mona Walsh's house. The lock on Mona Walsh's front door was in fine shape, except that the door wasn't locked. The living room was the way I'd remembered it. I went into the bedroom. She had fallen back across the bed. The stain on the front of her dress hadn't been her dressmaker's idea.
Hello?
Mrs. Walsh.
I thought I'd hope maybe I'd see you again.
Hold it. Emergency. An ambulance. 435 Ash. Gunshot wound, and make it quick. Yeah.
Mr. Craig?
Better not talk.
Why?
There'll be a doctor here in a couple of minutes.
You've seen people like this before. I should be dead.
Will you stop talking?
No, I won't. What do you want me to do? Think about what my life has been. Shouldn't have married Ted. He's bad.
Now you don't have to
I'm not making excuses. Only things happen. You lie about them. Even to yourself. Now I don't have to lie anymore.
Once the doctor gets here, you...
Oh, please. It's all going so fast now. Kiss me. Good night.
When
I was a little girl. My father always. Please.
Sure.
Thanks.
Good night. The doctor was a little late. The police arrived and made noises and were very busy. Mona Walsh didn't pay attention to any of them.
Barrie?
Yes, Lieutenant.
We haven't been able to get a thing. A couple of the neighbors heard the shots but thought they were a car backfiring.
That happens.
Which gives us the time Mrs. Walsh and the character in the alley were killed. An hour and 10 minutes ago.
Does knowing that make you feel any better?
With all the deaths you've seen, Barrie, you ought to be a little more callous about new ones.
Maybe I don't try hard enough.
Stay the way you are. It's better. Otherwise, you lose humanity. None of us can afford that.
They teach you that in college?
It's not taught anywheres. Something you either know or don't know. Our policeman isn't supposed to give lectures, though, so... Ted Walsh is out in the open now. He must have holed up for the last couple of weeks, but, we know he's in New York now. We'll get him.
Yeah. Mind if I get out now?
No. Where are you going? We could, kill a few beers after I'm through here.
Thanks, but not tonight, Trav. Because, you see, I won't be through for maybe longer than that. I wasn't holding out on Trav. I had to be sure. There was only one place I could think of that might help. If I were Ted Walsh, I'd go visit Harold. I wasn't Ted Walsh, but I went to visit him anyway. I always enjoyed driving. It was a nice night for it. The only thing wrong was a red stain on a girl's dress. There was a car parked outside Harold's house. It started pulling away as I came up. I didn't try to figure out anything subtle. I just cut my wheel right into it. Both cars stopped quick. I was out of mine before Bogan could quite make it. But he made it out of his car. Hello, Bogan.
Why don't you watch where you're driving?
Yeah, me. Oh, you don't want the gun, but I do.
Why, you bitch.
You'll wake the neighbors. Thanks for the gun.
Yeah.
Hey, warm, and it's been fired within very recent history.
Now, listen.
Let's see if there's anything else in your car, huh? No. Nothing that moves. Bogan?
Yeah.
I can't take the time to deliver you. I'll have to put you on deposit for a little while. He'd keep. I thought Mr. Harrell might still be at home. Worrying about his car, maybe.
Bogan, what? Oh, Craig.
We'll go inside.
Now, look here.
I've got Bogan's gun.
All right. What do you want?
Your car's in a bad way.
That crash?
Yeah, I'm a careless driver.
Was Bogan hurt?
He'll live.
I'm going to call for a doctor for him.
No.
Now, look here. This is perfectly...
You're nervous.
I haven't anything further to say to you, Craig.
One man's opinion. Yours. I don't share it.
You must have looked into the car.
I did.
Well, that can be explained easily.
Explain it easily.
You saw Ted Walsh's body in the back of the car. He was a killer. He apparently thought his wife and I had been a little too friendly.
Had you?
Well, you know how it is, Craig.
I don't know.
Well, anyway, he came here. Threatened to kill me, so... Well, Bogan beat him to it, that's all. It was a case of self-defense. It would stand up at any court.
Sure.
Oh, there's no reason to lose your head.
I haven't lost it. Where was Bogan delivering the body? To the aquarium?
Well, you see, Bogan's record isn't too good. He was afraid the police might not readily accept a plea of self-defense. He wanted to dispose of the body. I tried to dissuade him, but I failed. As a matter of fact, I was just about to notify the police myself.
Oh, I'm sure you were.
I think you'll find the bullets in Ted Walsh's body came from Bogan's gun.
I don't doubt it.
Well, then that sort of leaves me out of it, doesn't it?
How about the bullets in the body of the boy you sent to guard Mona Walsh? How about the bullets in Mona Walsh's body?
They're dead?
They're dead.
Oh, it's terrible.
Sure.
Ted must have got to them. He had a gun. The bullets in those bodies would have come from his gun.
Don't you mean the gun you planted on him? Mr. Harold looked a little sick. His face matched the way I felt. For a minute, I wished I'd developed those calluses Trav mentioned. Then I forgot about it. Mr. Harold retreated behind his desk.
Planted on him?
Ted Walsh came here before he went to visit his wife for his share of the bank money. Walsh died here. Bogan saw to that. But you still didn't own all of that $60,000. Mona Walsh might be considered to have a claim to half of it. So you decided to wipe out that claim.
You're dreaming.
You headed for a house. You had to take care of the boy in the alley. Walsh would have had to in order to get to Mona. You took care of him. Then you went into the house and ended the partnership between you and Mona Walsh.
No.
Yeah. You came back here, planted the gun you'd used on Ted Walsh. Bogan would dump his body where it wouldn't be found for a while. That way, no medical examiner could tell that Walsh had died before his wife.
That's very clever. You've got nothing to prove it with.
There's Ted Walsh's body. Examination now will show he died before Mona did.
A good lawyer could...
I've got something else. Something that told me Ted Walsh hadn't killed his wife before I even came here.
What's that?
An unlocked door.
I don't know what that means.
Mona Walsh's door was unlocked when I got to her house. The lock hadn't been tampered with, which meant Mona had opened that door. But she wouldn't have opened it to her husband. She was afraid of him. She'd have opened it for you, Harold. You've been fumbling in that desk drawer long enough. Bring the gun up. Maybe you'll beat me to the shot, huh?
I don't want to get involved.
You're involved. There's nothing left except maybe a chance to take me. Well? Okay, Harold. You're better, much better at killing women. Let's go tell some cops about it, huh?
You have been listening to William Gargan in another exciting transcribed mystery drama from the adventures of Barrie Craig, confidential investigator. Tonight's story, The Long Way Home, was written by Lou Vittis. Next week, it's the strange story titled Dead Reckoning, about which Barrie Craig has this to say.
Next week, matter triumphs over mind when a corpse with no head for figures starts pitching his weight around, with yours truly playing catch. Good night, folks. See you next week.
Featured in the role of Mona was Barbara Weeks. Barrie Craig, starring William Gargan, was under the direction of Hyman Brown. This is Don Pardo speaking.
Welcome back. This is another episode where Gargan just does a fantastic job portraying Craig as having this a sense of right and wrong that really, when you're dealing with the hard-boiled detective in its origins, was very critical. They's at their best in kind of the Philip Marlowe mold, are good men operating in a world full of bad people. And certainly that's where Craig lines up in this particular episode. Well, I did mention I'd discuss all the episodes we missed here. So the lost episode titles: Murder in Mink, Key Witness, Unknown Corpse, The Masked Mermaid, Love That Kills, Cry for Help, Top Secret, The Drowned Ghost, The Hired Killer, Talent for Murder, A Night in Istanbul, The Finger Man, The Client Was a Corpse, Prize Captive, Husband for Hire, Corpse on a Carousel, Murder in Motion, and The Big Kill, which actually sounds like a Dragnet episode. Oh, and Shroud for a Fugitive. Thankfully, we only have 11 lost episodes between this episode and the next set of episodes, which come in October of 1952. All right, well, now we turn to listener comments and feedback. Barrie Craig is the best. Johnny Dollar is a close second. High praise indeed for the top confidential investigator. And there might even be a case that during the time that Barrie Craig was airing, that Barrie Craig was as good or better than the Johnny Dollar episodes, particularly of John Lund and Edmund O'Brien. Don't know, but good comment there. And then finally, love the show, been listening for 2 years, and you just keep getting better and better. Well, thank you so much for your great comments and support. Really appreciate it. This episode of Rogues Gallery is brought to you by our fantastic listeners. Thank you so much for your financial support. And now here is today's episode. Where there's a will, there's a murder.
The F.W. Fitch Company presents Dick Powell as private investigator Richard Rogue in Rogues Gallery.
Laugh a while, let a song be your style. Use Fitch shampoo. Don't despair, use your head, save your hair. Use Fitch shampoo.
The F.W. Fitch Company, makers of Fitch's Dandruff Remover Shampoo and Ideal Hair Tonic, presents Dick Powell as private investigator Richard Rogue in Rogues Gallery.
Rogue speaking. Business was booming like California real estate. And I was lending my magnificent talents to about a half a dozen different investigations on this day I'm going to tell you about. I was as happy as a cat in a canary cage when on my way back from lunch I stopped at the cigar stand in the lobby of my building to buy a package of cigarettes. Herb Hyde, the character who owns and operates that cough emporium when he's not playing gin rummy with me and cheating, gave me a big wink. Herb's a little guy who is at all times conversant with the score, who is playing, and whether the game is fixed or not. He's slightly bigger than the fox, twice as smart. And that balding gray head of his contains more pertinent knowledge than your nearest library. When he slyly closed his left optic and just as slyly opened it again, I bent my manly torso over the counter and gave him my undivided attention.
Hey, Rogue, you got company, Rogie. Big stuff.
Yeah. Somebody waiting in the office?
Yeah, $2 million waiting up there. Angela Mullins.
Angela Mullins?
Yeah, that's right. That rates a whistle from anyone. She's got plenty of dough, Rogie, money. And if she's looking for a private investigator, something's up. But look, after you shake hands with her, be sure to count your fingers.
Yeah, I understand she throws the dough around like an armless woman.
Yeah, she inherited a cool $1 million when her husband kicked the bucket. And she's run it up to double now by sharp deals. You know, I understand she killed her husband with her meanness. Wouldn't even give him enough to eat. She's got a niece and a nephew, her only living relative. Niece lives with her. Nephew is married and lives in San Francisco. She won't give either of them a dime. Meanest woman in the world. She's 67.
Look, Herb, how do you know all these things? What have you been doing? Making a study of the old girl just in case she ever dropped in to talk with me?
Oh, you know how it is, Rogie. Running a place like this, you get all the gossip.
Oh, Herb, you're the poor man's Winchell. You store up information like a squirrel stores up nuts.
Yeah. Oh, no. You see, I'm just a dummy. Oh, I wouldn't be running a little stand like this. I'd have a big one, big. You know, in a better building.
Yeah. How about some gin rummy in my apartment tonight, huh?
Sure. I'll be over at 9.
I'll admit that I was running a high fever in my curiosity department during the elevator ride which whisked me toward my interview with Angela Mullins. The old lady was a legend in our town. She was irascible, mean, miserly, and cruel. She drove the only remaining electric car in the world and drove it wide open right through the heaviest traffic. She had a sea bag full of residence mortgages and took great personal delight in foreclosing them. Grand girl. She was waiting in my outer office, black bonnet tied under her chin, black alpaca dress, shiny with age, low-heeled button shoes, and gimlet eyes.
You Richard Rogue, the investigator?
Yes?
You don't look as smart as the newspaper stories about you sound.
Well, I'm quite a bit brighter than I look.
Well, I hope so. You know who I am?
Yes, of course. You're Mrs. Angela Mullins.
That's right. I suppose you think I'm a little crazy. Most people do. You think I'm a miserly old hag.
You know, I hardly ever think about it. Sit down, please, Mrs. Mullins.
Yeah, thanks. I will. I want to talk with you, Rogue, but first I want to know what your charges are.
Well, it depends on the case. You tell me what you want me to do, and I'll name my price. If you want me badly enough, you'll pay it. If you don't, I've lost nothing but time. Now, what do you want me to do?
Young man, I've done business with people like you for over half a century. I don't tell my problems until I get a price.
I've got great respect for the sanctity of womanhood and for old age. So I'm not going to ask you to leave until you're rested.
If you're as clever as you think you are, you can accomplish what I want you to do in 24 hours. What are your charges for 24 hours?
Depends on the work. If it's as simple as you say it is, it'll cost you, $500 for the first 24 hours.
$500?
Take it or leave it.
I'll take it. Mr. Rogue, I want you to find out who it was who stole my will.
Stole your will?
Yes. A few weeks ago, I was supposed to die. The half-witted doctor who's been taking care of me for many years told me I was going to die. My relatives had a great celebration, I suppose. I fooled them, though. I lived.
Yes, I see you did. What were you supposed to die of?
My heart. I'm supposed to have a bad heart. Why, it's as strong and steady as yours. I feel fine. But that fool doctor keeps warning me to take care of myself. Trying to make an invalid of me, Mr. Rogue.
Look, if you had a heart attack 2 weeks ago, shouldn't you be home in bed?
I came down to see my dentist. He's here in your building. I had a tooth bothering me, and that was my excuse for getting out of the house without my spying niece knowing I was coming down to see you. Somebody stole my will, Mr. Rogue. And if I died today, I would die intestate. My money would all go to my only living relatives. A niece whom I loathe and a nephew whom I detest. Now, tomorrow I'm going to see my lawyer and write another one, just like the one which was stolen.
I see. Now, what disposition did the will make of your estate?
I left $5,000 to each of those helpless little fools, and all the rest to a missionary society.
You think it was either your niece or your nephew who stole the will?
Well, who else would have any interest in it? I kept it in a strong box under my bed. It's gone now, strong box and all. Here's your $500. Whoever stole that will expected me to die. They were disappointed the last time, Mr. Rogue, and now I don't know what they'll do next.
All right. Now, your nephew lives in San Francisco, doesn't he?
Yes. How did you know that?
Well, I'm an investigator. I try to keep informed on everything. Was your nephew in town at the time the will disappeared?
He was. He was by my bedside waiting for me to die and arguing with me.
I beg your pardon, Mr. Rogue. Angela, you should be at home in bed. I told you that when you left my office.
And I told you I wasn't going there until I took care of some business, Sam. This is my dentist, Mr. Rogue, Samuel Hall.
Oh, yes, we've passed through the lobby several times, shared a few elevators. How are you, Dr. Hall?
Fine, thank you. Angela, I want you to go right
Sam,
home.
if you don't stop ordering me around,
I'm telling you for your own good. Go home now. I'll see you there tonight. And if that new crown I install gives you any trouble...
Yes. Remember this, Mr. Rogue. Our discussion has been strictly private. Now, if you'll help me out of this chair, I'll go home.
Of course.
Yes. I'll see you both at 8 o'clock this evening at my home.
I'll be there. That $500 check in my pocket did its best to pay for the depression I felt that afternoon, and it came in second. I didn't like Angela Mullins. I called up some of the old-timers around the banks and the newspapers in town to put the bite on them for some information about the old girl, and the best any of them could say for her was that she had been the best speller in the 3rd grade. Evidently, she'd done nothing decent since. My conscience told me to give back the 5 bills and bow out of the case. $500 is a lot of money. But I have to shave every morning, and when I shave, I have to look at myself. So I decided to turn the case down. When I arrived in front of the dilapidated old mansion where Angela Mullins lived and counted her money, there were 2 other cars in the driveway. One was an old model coupe with the earmarks of hard use. The other was a shiny sedan with the insignia of a doctor on it. It was just 8 o'clock as I went up the creaky steps across the porch and knocked with the old-fashioned knocker.
Hello, Mr. Rogue. I'm afraid we're too late.
What do you mean we're too late, Dr. Hall? I'm right on time.
We're too late, Mr. Rogue. Angela had a heart attack at 6 o'clock. She's dead.
We'll continue our story in just a moment. First, sometimes after we've talked about Fitch shampoo, someone will remark, yes, but I still don't see how a shampoo will remove dandruff. Well, there are really 2 reasons. The first lies in the nature of dandruff itself. Contrary to many ideas, scientists do not consider dandruff to be a disease, but a natural scalp condition. Therefore, dandruff has to be removed, not cured. The second reason is that Fitch shampoo removes dandruff with the first application. And this means not only loose dandruff, but the kind that clings to the scalp as well. For Fitch shampoo penetrates the thousands of tiny hair openings on the scalp, cleansing them thoroughly and dissolving every trace of dandruff. Ask for a big economical bottle of Fitch's Dandruff Remover Shampoo at your drug or toilet goods counter, or have a professional application at your barber or beauty shop. Remember, Fitch is the only shampoo made whose guarantee to remove dandruff is backed by one of the world's largest insurance firms. Use it regularly each week. Now back to Dick Powell as Private Investigator Richard Rogue in Rogue's Gallery.
Angela Mullins was dead. Whoever had lifted that strong box containing her will from under her bed had made millionaires of the only 2 living relatives the old lady left behind. I had accepted a $500 fee for finding out who the strong box lifter was. When I walked into the house, the nephew, Paul Warner, the niece, Claire Mullins, and Dr. Hall, the dentist, were there. Paul and Claire were in the living room when Dr. Hall ushered me in. Claire was as stunning as a blackjack behind the ear and was the lyrics to every love song. She was sitting in a big old-fashioned chair crying. Paul was standing in front of the fireplace, his rugged face caricatured into a sad scowl. Dr. Hall introduced me.
Claire, this is Richard Rogue, private investigator. Claire Mullins, Mr. Rogue.
How do you do?
Hello.
And this is Paul Warner, Mr. Rogue.
I'm glad to know you, Warner.
Thanks.
Dr. Stevens is still upstairs, Mr. Rogue. He'll be here in a moment, I suppose.
May I ask what your business is here at this time, Mr. Rogue?
Well, your aunt commissioned me this afternoon to do a job for her.
She doesn't need any jobs done for her now. She's dead.
Yes, I know. I'm sorry.
You're sorry? I'm not.
Paul, don't say that. After all, she was your mother's sister.
I'm sorry, Claire, but I can't be hypocritical. The only reason I'm sorry she's dead is I wanted to talk with her tonight. I wanted to try again to borrow some money from her.
Don't worry about that, Paul. I can help you out with the amount you want.
Mr. Rogue, I think you'd better come back some other time.
Your aunt's death doesn't end my job for her, Miss Mullins.
What do you mean, Rogue?
Well, I still have to find out who stole her will from under her bed when she had her last heart attack.
Her will?
Yes, she came to see me about that this afternoon.
You mean something has happened to that will, the one that left everything to that mission in Tibet or someplace? Has she written another will?
No, not that I know of. She said she was going to make a new one tomorrow. Do you know anything about the missing will, Mr. Warner?
No. Are you accusing me of this theft, Rogue?
I'm not accusing anybody at the moment. But there were only 2 people in the world who stood to win by the disappearance of that will.
I don't understand what you mean, Mr. Rogue.
If your aunt died without leaving a will, her estate will be divided between her living heirs. That's you and Warner.
Ah, that's right, Claire. Ha-ha! We're rich.
Oh, Paul,
Mr. Rogue, I don't think this is quite the time to discuss the affair of the missing will.
I would like to talk to the doctor on the case. You'll excuse me, please?
Why do you want to talk to Dr. Stevens, Rogue?
Because I think under the circumstances that he should be very sure that death was caused by unaided heart failure before he signs that death certificate. Mrs. Mullins was afraid of an attempt on her life.
You think one of us murdered her for money?
It's been done before. I'm not saying it was done this time, but I think there should be an autopsy to protect the heirs from suspicion. As long as neither of you had anything to do with your aunt's death, I'm sure you'll agree that such a procedure is for your protection.
Did I hear talk of an autopsy in here?
Oh, you Dr. Stevens?
Yes.
This is Richard Rogue, the private investigator, Dr. Stevens.
Oh, yes, Mr. Rogue. Could I help you in any way?
I'm working for the late Mrs. Mullins. Doctor, are you positive that her death was due to a heart attack?
Are you questioning my knowledge of my profession, Mr. Rogue?
No, I'm merely asking you a question, Doctor. Under the circumstances surrounding the death of Mrs. Mullins, there is a possibility of murder. I'm sure you wouldn't care to assist a murderer.
Murderer? Well, I certainly would not. You think Mrs. Mullins was murdered?
Oh, I think it's possible. I'm going to tell the facts as I know them to the police. And I also am going to suggest an autopsy.
That's a lot of foolishness, Mr. Rogue, and I shall so inform the police.
You're willing to say that only heart failure could have caused Mrs. Mullins' death?
Mr. Rogue, my diagnosis is heart failure. Good day.
I left and called Urban from the nearest drugstore and gave him a quick pitch on the case. He oh'd and ah'd a little bit and finally decided he'd talk with the commissioner about an autopsy. I remembered my gin rummy date with Herb Hyde, so I told Urban to call me at home later that night. I didn't get the call. When I got home, somebody was waiting for me. I opened the door. Oh, and the world caved in. I fell into a great void. I fell into a blackness so heavy it felt like velvet against my skin. I fell for centuries before the blast hit, and the blackness was shattered with zigzagging red, blue, and yellow lights. And I was picked up in a blast so strong that it shot me up into the heavens at a speed faster than light. I opened my eyes and saw Cloud 8, my home away from home. I called Ugor. Ugor!
I'm coming, Rogie. I'm coming. Put down your flaps, Chiefy. You're coming in for a landing.
Oh, Ugor, somebody hit me.
You're making an understatement. That's not like you, Chiefy. Somebody beat your brains out.
Oh, it's so good to be here on Cloud 8. It's so peaceful. And if you'd shut up, it'd be so quiet.
Hey, Rogie, you were a little late tonight. I thought maybe you were going to get by without coming up.
Oh, no. Who hit me?
Well, somebody did, Chiefy. Now you've got to get to work. You got to get back downstairs.
Oh, don't mention it. I'm staying up here a good long time. I'm kind of sick.
You won't feel any better until you get downstairs, Rogie. Now, come on. Over the side with you.
No, Ugor.
Stop hanging on, Chiefy. Ugor knows best. You have to go back downstairs.
But I've been sick.
Oh, no. Over you go. Over the side. There. So long, Rogie.
for the love of Mike, Rogie.
Yeah? Oh, yeah. What do you want?
Rogie, it's Herb Hyde. Remember our Gene Rummy date?
Oh, it's you. Well, hi, Herb.
Fine. Hey, what's the matter, Rogie? What happened to you?
Well, isn't that pretty obvious?
Yeah, sure is. Here, take a drink of this water.
No, get me a brandy. There's some over there in that cabin.
Sure. Can you see now?
Of course I can see. What have I got to look at?
There's a note here.
Yeah? Oh, now, let me have it.
Rogie, somebody wants to get rid of you.
Huh? Well, it just says, get out of town. It's not even signed.
Look at your place. All torn to the devil. Somebody was looking for something. Who do you suppose it was, Rogie?
Who knows? There are plenty of people who would like to see me move out of town. Get Urban on the phone, will you? Tell him to come over here.
Sure. I'll get him right away.
Every nerve in my head was doing the Highland Fling to the tune of the Anvil Chords as I lay there and tried to figure out who it was that slipped me that lead pipe sleeping pill. I was working on a half-dozen cases, and I didn't know which one of them had enough dynamite in it to cause the mayhem. Herb Hyde called Urban. We sat there and played gin rummy until Urban arrived. The part of my mind which was still working was on my troubles, and Herb's was on the cards. I was 370 behind when the door opened and Urban walked in.
Well, what happened to you, Rogie?
Oh, what a question.
Somebody hit him on the head.
Yeah, that's right.
Kind of shook the place down a little, too, didn't they, Rogie?
Yeah, Urban, you know all the cases I'm mixed up in at the moment. Where am I near enough to a pinch to cause somebody to bend the plumbing over my head?
Well, we ordered that autopsy on Angela Mullins, as you asked us to.
Angela Mullins? She dead?
Yeah, what did you find out, Urban?
It was a good tip, Rogie. She'd been fed enough poison to kill an elephant.
Poison, huh?
That's right. Poisoned with cyanide.
We'll return to our story in just a moment. First, a word to the ladies. A beautiful woman is like a symphony, care and technique and details adding up to a lovely theme. That's why millions of beauty-wise women choose Fitch's Dandruff Remover Shampoo for their hair grooming. Soft, lustrous hair is a beauty detail they've learned to value. Fitch's Dandruff Remover Shampoo cleanses the hair gently and efficiently with its mounds of snowy lather. And while it's cleansing, Fitch Shampoo is also reconditioning the hair and scalp. This reconditioning action gives the hair strands greater elasticity, so your hair will take a wave better and hold it longer. And when you use Fitch's Dandruff Remover Shampoo, notice how quickly and easily it rinses out, leaving your hair with a satiny texture, sparkling with natural color highlights. Make Fitch's Dandruff Remover Shampoo your regular aid to lovely, shining hair. Always ask for Fitch, spelled F-I-T-C-H. Fitch's Dandruff Remover Shampoo. Now back to Dick Powell as Private Investigator Richard Rogue in Rogue's Gallery.
For some reason or other, I was expecting Urban to crack that news about the death of Angela Mullins being murder. One of my famous hunches had whispered that suspicion to my subconscious as soon as I'd heard of her death. Herb Hyde, who'd come over to play gin rummy and remained to put my head back on after some character unknown had knocked it off, was delighted to find himself in the middle of a murder investigation. Urban gave me all the dope in words of one syllable.
She was poisoned with cyanide. That's all there is to it. It was fed to her some way, and she died in a matter of minutes of what looked like heart failure. How did you know it wasn't a heart attack, Rogie? What made you so smart?
Well, Angela Mullins was up to see me this afternoon. She was expecting an attempt on her life.
Well, she wasn't disappointed, was she?
No. Well, you lost a client, Rogie. Did you get your dough in advance?
Yes, and I'm going to keep her out on the job. Who do you think did it, Urban?
There are only 2 suspects in the case. I've talked to both of them.
The niece and the nephew?
That's right.
One of them did it, huh?
They had plenty of motive.
Yeah. What do you know about it?
Well, I know the old lady's will was missing, and I know they'll divide the estate between them if the will isn't found. A couple of $1 million is a great motive for murder.
Yeah, it's a nice price.
You managed to break it down yet, Urban?
No, they both swear they didn't have anything to do with it.
Well, that's a fairly normal reaction.
Yeah, sure.
Think you can get an indictment?
The DA's thinking it over. One of them did the job all right. They were the only 2 people around when the old lady died. and this cyanide takes less than a minute to be effective. We got an open and shut case against one of them.
I think I'll take a run over to the Mullins house. I'll see you later, Urban.
Mr. Rogue, I didn't poison her. I want you to know that.
You might as well face it, Claire. Cyanide, that's the poison they found your aunt had died of, is one of the fastest-acting poisons known. There was nobody in the house but you and Warner at the time, was there?
No, there was just the three of us here. Paul and I were sitting downstairs here, and Auntie had just gone up to lie down for a while. Next thing we knew, she was dying.
Well, let me look around a little bit. Where did your aunt keep her important papers?
The really important ones she kept in that strong box under her bed. The strong box that the will was in.
Mm-hmm.
The police have been over the house. It isn't here.
Yes, did you have a desk?
Yes, it's in her office. The study upstairs. The study's upstairs, but you won't find anything there. Really, Mr. Rogue, I wish you'd go. The police are taking care of everything.
I want to take a look through that desk, Claire. Oh, now, look, don't cloud up and cry at me. I'm just trying to help you, that's all.
I didn't do it. Oh, Mr. Rogue, I wish I were dead.
There's something about a beautiful girl's tears that turns my iron will to sugar and melts my good intention away like snow in the sunshine. I comforted Claire for a while, all the time wondering whether or not I was giving all that fine philosophy away to a murderess. And then I went to work. I combed that house like a head of hair, and I didn't find the will. But I did find some pay dirt. A letter written on distinctive stationery. That little buzz I get in my solar plexus told me that I'd solved a murder. That letter and that interview with Angela Mullins in my office added up to a pointing finger which I followed right out of the house. I was on the trail of the missing strongbox. I called Urban, gave him a hot tip on murder, then went to work. When I arrived at my destination, no one was home, so I let myself in through a basement window. I went to work like I only had 5 minutes to live. I started in on the top floor and hurricaned my way back into the basement before I found what I was looking for. The missing strongbox with the name Angela Mullins stenciled on its lid. I put it under my arm and walked up the stairs with it. As I walked into the kitchen, I saw him standing there with a gun in his hand.
Hello, Mr. Rogue.
Oh, hello, Dr. Hall.
I see you found it.
Yes, you were a little bit too sure of yourself, Doctor.
Yes, I can see now that I was. Where did I slip up, Rogue?
I found a letter from you to Mrs. Mullins. A letter about a $50,000 note she was pressing you for.
Yes?
Well, Doc, you'd carelessly written that letter on the same stationery you had used to write me a note. The one you left in my apartment telling me to leave town. When you batted my brains out, remember?
Yes. How unfortunate. You know, Rogue, killing is like lying. One leads to another.
Oh, what good's it going to do you to kill me?
You are the only person who even suspects me of murdering Angela. I tore up the note, and incidentally, I also tore up the will. There's absolutely nothing now to tie me into this murder, Rogue, except you.
Look, Doc, you'll never get away with this.
No, Rogue, no. They'll never get me alive.
Well, I guess I'll have to.
Well, Rogue, I guess we got here too late.
Oh, I'd say you got here just in time. There's your murderer.
Yeah, we checked that information you gave us, Rogue.
Well, what did you find?
Dr. Hall was the killer. Very clever job. He put enough cyanide to kill a horse into a little gelatin capsule. Then he put the capsule in the crown on Mrs. Mullins' tooth.
Oh, brother. And when the capsule melted, the cyanide hit the bloodstream. Oh, Urban, what would you do without me? Well, that was the end of that case. When the doorbell rang, Doc got rattled, and I knocked him cold. Urban was very proud of me. Dr. Hall admitted he'd put the capsule full of cyanide in the gold crown he'd made for Angela Mullins. She had been pressing him for payment of a $50,000 note, which he couldn't pay. He was executed. The will was never found, and Claire and Paul got the old lady's money. But they did very handsomely by me for getting them off the hook, and I spent the money in pursuit of Betty Callahan. She was playing hard to get in those days, but I wore down. Case of mouse catching the mousetrap. You know what I mean? This is Dick Powell again, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you enjoyed our story tonight. Ray Buffum wrote it.
Leith Stevens composed and conducted the music, and Dee Engelbach produced and directed. Be with us again next week, will you? We have a story for you entitled When the Sun Shines Through the Roof. So on the scratch of Basil. Thanks for listening, and now here's Jim Doyle.
Listen again next week at this same time to hear Dick Powell as private investigator Richard Rogue in Rogue's Gallery. And by the way, Dick will soon be seen in his newest Columbia picture, Johnny O'Clock.
Laugh a while, let a song be your style. Use Fitch shampoo. Don't despair, use your head, save your hair. Use Fitch shampoo.
After and between Fitch shampoos, you can keep your hair shining and manageable by using a few drops of Fitch's Ideal Hair Tonic every day. Fitch's Ideal Hair Tonic is not sticky or greasy, yet it gives your hair that well-groomed look.
Welcome back. The solution to this case seemed a little bit familiar to me because I saw a 1990 Columbo movie, Uneasy Lies the Crown, where the exact same method of murder was used. But that was written by Stephen Bacco, who was 3 years old when this aired, so probably more a case of great minds think alike than any sort of actual borrowing. And this is our last episode of Rogue's Gallery with Dick Powell. I should say we're not completely done with Mr. Powell. He'll be in some other series and specials, including, and most notably, Richard Diamond. And there were 10 more weeks in the Rogue's Gallery summer season before Powell left the show to focus on his movie career for a few years, and would not return to being a radio detective for about 3 years. But there were attempts to have Rogue's Gallery without Powell, and we'll see how that works next week and the week afterwards. One of the interesting technological changes I found was when Rogue mentioned her having an electric car, being the only one who still had an electric car. We think the Chevy Volt is something new. All right, well, listener comments from Podcast Alley. Phil in West Virginia says, please accept my thanks for providing these podcasts 5 days a week. Well, thank you, Phil. Appreciate your support and contact. I encourage everyone, if you do have a comment, email us box13@greatdetectives.net. This episode of Let George Do It is brought to you by our fantastic listeners. Thank you so much for your financial support. And here now is today's episode, The Scream of the Eagle.
Personal notice, danger's my stock and trade. If the job's too tough for you to handle, you got a job for me, George Valentine. Write full details. Standard Oil Company of California, on behalf of independent Chevron gas stations and standard stations throughout the West, invite you to Let George Do It. The Scream of the Eagle, another adventure of George Valentine.
My dear Mr. Valentine, I hate injustice, even when it happens to one of my own relatives. Matilda Jonathan, a distant cousin, a young girl, tragic case. If I weren't so busy with my own investment service, I'd help her myself. But then again, I might not. Because a man in my position can't afford to have people misconstrue his intentions. And I'll thank you not to misconstrue that either. No, sir, I don't mean intentions romantic. Because this Matilda really isn't much of a one for waltzing, being more of the outdoor type. Nor is she much of a one for looks. Just an ordinary girl with nothing special coming her way
except $5 million, which she won't get unless she has some really high-powered help and fast. Because, Mr. Valentine, have you ever heard of a Blackstone bloodhound named McNeil? Well, sir, that lawyer will spin Matilda out of her million faster than you could say San Quentin. So will you please jump in there fast and do something about this? Matilda, I happen to know, is going to see McNeil this morning at his office, 10 o'clock. And be careful, you're up against a man who can squeeze the eagle and really make it scream. Yours very truly, Jameson Piazza.
The guy's really worried about poor little Matilda, isn't he?
George, make the eagle scream. I don't know what...
The eagle they print on bills and coins, Angel. The almighty dollar, the fast buck. Only in this case, there seem to be 5 million of them.
Well, anyway, George, here's your hat. And I wrote McNeil's address down for you on a piece of paper. The lawyer...
Hey, not so fast. I'd like to know a little more about the poor innocent heiress before I go tearing out after...
Well, the letter came while you were down having coffee. I already phoned Mike Landry down at the Daily Record.
Ah.
He looked up the files. Matilda's father was a big mine owner, made his money in South America. And I think you want to take the case all right, George. Because Matilda Jonathan died over a year and a half ago.
Mr. McNeil's very busy this morning, sir.
Yes, so I see. I won't take much of his time.
If you could just tell me what it's about, maybe I could...
I'm not quite sure myself. The original idea was... Well, does the name Matilda Jonathan mean anything to you?
Yes, sir. It means I won't be able to go to the baseball game this afternoon. I won't have time for lunch.
Oh, it does. Well, suppose you tell me...
If you'll just take the last chair in line, you'll have your turn.
Now, just a minute. Clear it up, will you?
It means I'm going to stop reading law and get me a soft job as ringmaster in a flea circus. It means
Come on now, what's the trouble? Matilda Jonathan is dead, isn't she?
Sir, you see all these men with the briefcases and all the girls?
Yeah.
Well, every one of them claims she's Matilda Jonathan.
Valentine, I'm a skeptic by nature.
All right, Mr. McNeil, and I'm just as confused.
I don't believe some of the people all the time, or any of the people any of the time. I know she's dead. She's not dead. Million, who's got the million? You see any hair on my head? No, of course you don't. Have an aspirin.
But you're the lawyer who took...
I'm the sucker who took a will client's hide unseen. Matilda Jonathan's father, 2 years ago. Mining man. Never lived in this country.
Oh?
Doctors ordered him up here. He came with his only daughter. Took a place in the country to die in, and he did. He died.
Okay, I follow you that far. But there's more to the story than that.
Well, aside from handling their baggage when they came and finding an up-country real estate man for them, I'd never seen the Jonathans. Daughter, at least. So I had to pitch into a will probate, flying little blind.
Go on.
But it was all in order. Only one principal heir, the daughter. Would have been just routine, only then it has to happen.
What happens?
Daughter has to go morbidly tragic about her father's death. This is all before the will is settled, you understand? And then she has to go swimming, all by herself, apparently. Got drowned.
Drowned? Ah, so that's how Matilda Jonathan died. But what brought her back to life? What multiplied her?
The whisper of the eagle, my friend. Here's an old photo taken of her. Taken in South America.
Uh-huh. Well, it's all out of focus. Only, wait a minute. Hey, yeah, there is some kind of a big bird in this shot. A hawk or something flying over her.
Yes, eagle's no joke. Falconry. Matilda liked falconry. If she'd liked her own looks a little better and had her photo taken a little more often...
Get back on the rails, will you?
I'm in tune, don't worry. Her father's will has never been settled, you understand? And all those people are out there claiming to be Matilda Jonathan, for the very simple reason that she drowned, but her body was never discovered.
Oh, it's beginning to dawn.
It's come up like thunder around this office, my friend. You should hear the stories I'm told. I just wandered off, sir, says one. I was kidnapped for that year and a half, says another. I've been living with the fish in the bottom of the lake, says a third. Now give me my daddy's $5 million.
Yeah, people like money, all right. But this kind of fraud wouldn't be easy. You must have some things to check against.
Very few things, Valentine. Anyway, the phonies are just an echo. Follow up of the real headache. A week ago, this item came out in the newspaper. You see it?
No, I didn't. Amnesia victim, claimant Jonathan Fortune.
Amnesia.
Young girl who's been living in a small mountain town for the past year and a half claims to have recovered her memory. States that she is the one and only Matilda Jonathan, whom police have previously assumed to have drowned while swimming alone in the murky waters of the lake.
Has been living under the name of Irma something or other. And she's got a good story. Not like the others, oh, no. They're just trying to copy her idea. But Irma, she remembers Spanish. Remembers what her supposed father looked like. All sorts of things. She's done a lot of studying, Irma has.
So you think Irma's a phony, too, huh?
You got a letter from one Jameson P. Edsel, didn't you? Distant cousin of Jonathan?
Good spy system.
No, just 2 and 2. Edsel's been hounding me for the past 2 weeks. He says he knows this girl is the right one.
Well, if he's a relative.
Johnny! 10 o'clock, isn't it?
Nearly 1:15, sir.
Well, if that Irma girl is here, tell her to come in.
Yes, sir.
Let you take a look at her. Oh, and Johnny, that sailor, that Juan, whatever his name is.
Juan Fernandez, sir.
Yeah. Phone his hotel. Ask him to come over.
I'll take care of it.
Look, Mr. McNeil.
I'm still with you. This Jameson P. Edsel, who was so sure that Irma's really Matilda, never saw that dear rich relative of his until now. He's also in his will for $1,000, which he won't get until it's settled, one way or the other.
You think everybody's a fraud.
I think Matilda drowned like to be sick. Yeah, it's a tough lake to recover a body from. Happened to other people up there. If the money doesn't go to this girl Irma, or if the real Matilda doesn't turn up after a reasonable length of time, then the money all goes to a charity, a nice, deserving charity. Well, do you blame me if I'm a little skeptical about
So
this?
tell me, who's this Juan Fernandez?
The clincher. The only one I could find. Sailor, Bolivian. Used to be a servant of the Jonathans. I had him flown up here.
Oh, I get it.
Probably the only person who'll ever be able to look at this girl Irma and tell us whether she's really...
Excuse me, but that girl, she was here just a second ago, but she left. I can't find her.
What?
Took off, huh? You told her about this Fernandez coming to identify her this morning, McNeil, huh?
Yes.
Well, I guess that does it, doesn't it?
I don't know what it does, sir, but whatever it is, it won't be done.
What do you mean?
No, sir. I telephoned Fernandez's hotel like you said. Only somebody named Lieutenant Riley was there. The Bolivian is dead.
No, he wasn't murdered. He was hit by a truck. It happened last night.
Yeah, but Riley, after what we told you...
I know. He wasn't hit by a truck. He was murdered. How could I tell the difference? How could anybody?
But if it was a street accident, surely the truck driver
What
could
driver, Miss Brooks? It was hit and run.
No witnesses to help?
Of course not. It may be murder, but we'll never prove it.
Mm-hmm. Riley, you say there were a lot of old scars on Fernandez's arm.
Yeah.
Now, they don't have anything to do with...
Oh, but they do. Yeah, they prove he knew the girl, that he really did know her in the old days. Eagle scratches, that's what they are.
What?
Scratches from handling birds, Miss Brooks. Hawks, eagles.
Yeah. McNeil talked about falconry.
Yeah, we got a little on that ourselves. There was some stuff in some old magazines. This guy taught Matilda what she knew about handling the big ones without getting killed.
Brooksy, did you locate Jameson P. Edsel?
Huh?
Yes, George. Mr. Edsel has an office downtown, but he said he'd meet
Come on,
us.
let's go.
Hey, now, wait a minute. Where you going?
I'm going to chase the other kind of bird lovers, Riley. The ones who make a hobby of the other kind of eagle. Only I don't think it'll be the eagle who does the screaming.
In heaven's name, what is this? All you've done since you picked me up is make insinuations. I don't know anything about any murder. No. Next block, Mr. Valentine.
Okay.
Mr. Edsel, why were you so sure that this Irma is really Matilda?
But I'm taking you to see her, aren't I? There it is, Valentine. The Sterling Arms. Now, after all, I never told you that I was positive or that I could prove she was...
Oh, backsliding now. The man who hates injustice doesn't want to get caught being...
I beg your pardon, sir. I'm a man of some standing. I'm not used to being talked to like a...
Oh, yeah, sure. Be careful. She may not be here. Last time I heard of her, she was scared by something. So maybe she's running now. Or maybe she's all ready to claim $5 million. But whichever way it is, you don't want to spoil anything. Not if you're working together.
Matilda. Matilda, dear. Oh, Matilda.
Try calling her Irma.
Matilda. Well, she stepped out for a moment, Mr. Valentine.
Not here, huh? All right, Buster, let's have it.
What?
And never mind the big shot routine.
Well, I don't know.
This investment service you run, I should have spotted the pitch, the racetrack squint. Which horse do you like at Holly Park in the third?
Get your hands...
How much is Irma paying you to swear she's your relative?
But I
Or is
don't
it you
know
that's paying her to act the part? Is it both of you trying to defraud an estate out of $5 million?
I said to let
You don't
go
know
of
anything about a murder, do you, huh? When the guy who gets killed by accident happens to be the one person in the world who could foul up Irma's and your claim.
Mr. Vallet, we should find her. Perhaps she is in danger, too.
Oh, she's in no danger. The job's done. It's all over. With Fernandez out of the way, all little Irma has to do to cash in is to...
What are you doing?
Matilda.
Huh?
I was just George Catcher.
Matilda. Oh, poor child.
She's bleeding. Look at her arm.
Yeah, what are all these bandages?
The man in the drugstore bandaged it for me. Took a lot of skin off. He said I should get a doctor. I thought I could come up here first.
Slow down now, easy. It'll be all right.
He knocked me straight over. I threw up my hands to keep from falling on my face.
What did?
Cousin Edsel? Are you my cousin? I'm Irma. I'm Matilda. I had to leave an office this morning because I felt sick again. I don't know who I am. I don't care who I am. All I want is for cars to stop coming up behind me like that so fast and then leave.
Get me on, George. The same thing that
All
happened.
I want is for people to stop trying to kill me.
We'll return to tonight's adventure of George Valentine in just a moment. Did you know that both new cars and older cars can be slowed down by gum? Yes, gum can rob them of power and pep, can make your car act logy under the best of driving conditions. This engine-sticking gum comes from the impurities existing in most raw gasoline, and the only way to get rid of those impurities is to refine them up. Now, Chevron Supreme is the gasoline that's super refined to get rid of gum. For best car performance, for extra power, and for that new car feeling, depend on super refined Chevron Supreme. Count on this premium quality gasoline, too, for full mileage in the kind of driving you do, whether it's everyday hometown driving or out on the vacation highway. Try a tank full tomorrow. You'll get and keep that new car feeling. Ask for Chevron Supreme gasoline at standard stations and independent Chevron gas stations where they say and mean, we take better care of your car. And now back to tonight's adventure of George Valentine. One man might have been able to tell whether an amnesia victim named Irma is really Matilda Jonathan, the heiress who is supposed to have drowned over a year and a half ago, but whose body was never found. Yes, Juan Fernandez might have been able to tell about Irma, but Juan Fernandez is dead. And if your name is George Valentine, you realize how difficult it's going to be to tell about Irma, because just when you thought you'd found a simple explanation for her, along came Irma herself. And it seems that a similar attempt had been made on her life. Why? Well, that's Lieutenant Riley's question.
She's not responsible for the South American's death, or why would it happen to her, too? That's plain enough. Only...
Yes, Lieutenant, it doesn't answer whether she's Matilda or not. Whether I should recommend to a court that she be just handed $5 million. Nor does it explain why anybody should possibly want her out of the way. After all, if she doesn't swindle us out of the money, it goes to charities, no one else.
You know, for a while there, McNeil, I went out on a long limb and thought Edsel and the girl were working together.
Don't apologize. We're all stupid together.
Only why do you still use a word like swindle? What makes you so sure she's phony?
Because I don't trust anybody, Mr. Valentine. I've got a sour stomach from trying to digest this greedy world.
Look, Valentine, we're rechecking all the evidence. But is it really likely she could have just disappeared and got amnesia? And Fernandez just get accidentally killed right now? And she just get accidentally bumped by somebody? Oh, brother, I ask you.
Me, I'd rather ask Irma. Or is it Matilda? How's her arm now, all right?
No, it wasn't bad, George. Just the skin. They put on another bandage. It was silly of me to faint like that. But I was in the hospital just a couple of weeks ago. Virus pneumonia. High fever. That's what brought my memory back. When I was sick.
You mean when you remembered that you were really Matilda?
Yes, that's right.
Uh-huh.
How did you lose your memory, Matilda?
I think I did go swimming that day. They found my clothes and all, so I must have.
Uh-huh.
But I remember putting on some old jeans and things, going out on the highway, just wanting to get as far away from there as I could. From the lake, from the house, my birds. Anything that reminded me of my father's death.
And then you don't know what happened?
Well, sort of. I mean, I had a fever then, too, and somebody took me to a doctor in a small town there in the mountains. I thought my name was Irma for some reason. When I got well, I used that name to work in the department store.
I see, but didn't the doctor understand to
Oh,
try
yes,
to...
he went to the police. But I guess they just didn't check down there. And they thought I was dead anyway.
Ah. Well, $5 million is a lot of money.
If it's mine, I should claim it, shouldn't I? But it's not important enough for things to happen like happened to Juan.
You remember Juan Fernandez from South America?
He was the one who taught me not to be afraid of the birds.
What kind of birds did you have up at the lake? Hawks? Falcons?
Well, they were just, local varieties. But I did have one that I brought from South America. I remember I called him Bobo. It took me years to train. He was a type of eagle.
An eagle? Wouldn't you know?
Oh, for heaven's sake, Valentine, here we go again.
Yeah, that's right, McNeil. Back to the other kind of eagle.
What's become of those birds in the last year and a half?
I don't know. Banks handled the estate.
Well, it's been held in trust, so nothing would have been sold yet.
Yeah, I guess so. Birds are still there, probably. Local real estate man makes a trip up once every week or so, check things over. He might know, but
Okay, let's all take a trip. And, Ronnie, we'll round up Jameson Edsel, too.
Valentine, what do you think you're going to prove by this?
Irma or Matilda, excuse me. How big is Bobo?
About 8 feet, I think. I mean, his wings, tip to tip.
Plus the usual beak and claws, I suppose. Someone who'd never really worked with a bird like that before, someone Bobo didn't recognize, might even get killed.
Down this way, still the same old cages.
Yes, I remember. Everything's so overgrown, though.
Have you been taking care of the birds, Mr. Jenkins?
Well, been up here every week to feed them. The size of their cages, though, part out in the open this way, they don't need much tending.
I see what you mean. More like tennis courts with a net. Oh!
Can't reach you, won't hurt you. Some of them get sort of friendly, not like that Bobo. He still charges me like an express train. Either turns up his nose or gets mad and won't let me near his cage.
Yeah, these look plenty tough, all right. You don't mean that Bobo...
Uh-oh. That's him.
Yes. That's Bobo, Mr. Valentine.
Yeah. About 3 times as big as the others. You haven't been saying much, Matilda. Why don't you tell me about him?
This is all rather an experience, coming back here for the first time.
George, look at his eyes. He just sits there staring at nothing.
Mm-hmm.
They look like agates, huge agates.
Yeah. Say, Jenkins, let me have the key to the padlock there. You run back and see if Lieutenant Riley's car is here yet, will you?
Sure, Mr. Valentine.
Thanks.
George, you're not going to open the gate.
No. Might as well wait. Whatever you want, Matilda.
Whatever you think.
Hey, your arm, the one that's hurt. Isn't it the one he perches on?
It's all right. Doesn't bother me, and the bandages are thick.
Well, that is the routine, isn't it? You go in there and sort of hold up your wrist?
Yes. Usually you wear a long glove, but I don't have
some gunny sacking over there if you'd like to wrap it over the bandage.
All right. Maybe that's a good idea.
Yeah. Those claws look like razors from here.
Yeah.
How about it, Bobo? You like strangers? Now, what do you do when a stranger leans against the gate of your cage? All right. Never mind.
Mr. Valentine, what was that?
Well, hello, Mr. Edsel. We're all here now, huh?
Yes, I ran ahead. I wanted to see you for a moment. Good heavens, that's quite a bird, isn't it?
Uh-huh. What do you want, promoter?
Well, I thought you should understand my position, that's all. When a man acts in good faith for the sake of someone he's never met in the past, but he thinks needs help now, Matilda isn't nervous, is she? This is quite a strain, for her.
Go on. What's the matter?
Isn't that dangerous?
Huh?
The lock there. You left it loose on the...
Look out, she'll drop it.
Yes, but the gate,
Get out of the way, you fool.
The gate, I'm...
Open it.
The gate, George! Get out! Hey, get that bird, get him! Well, I'm sorry, I didn't know.
Shut up, Buster, the bird's loose.
I saw that was the idea. So...
Let go of me.
Take it easy, Riley, take it easy. He didn't want the girl to get hurt. It's done now.
Well, I'll say it is. There goes the second identifying witness. You never saw a jet plane climb like that.
Yeah, Mr. McNeil. Bobo's in good condition, almost out of sight.
First, a South American, now a bird. Come over here, young lady. I think it's about time that we...
Here it comes!
Look out! Look out! It's diving down again!
He won't hurt you. He just came down to my wrist. You see? Nice Bobo.
Well, how does that strike a skeptic, Mr. McNeil? Probably not one person in a million could do that, he would argue. Except me.
What's that, Valentine?
Well, let's look at a few things, Emma. Like your arm there. The arm you got skinned up saving yourself from being knocked flat on your face by a car.
I don't understand.
When you're knocked forward like you said you were by a hit run, how can you expect to protect your face with only one hand? Why isn't the other arm hurt?
Oh, for heaven's sakes, that doesn't...
I think now I know why that arm got skinned and how. You did it yourself, didn't you, Irma? And then got some bandages over it so we wouldn't look.
Oh, Valentine, for the love of...
Larry, I know it's confusing. That's what they counted on. But you see, I just didn't trust anybody. Not even an eagle.
If you think that bird isn't dangerous, you're crazy.
A nice, well-fed, healthy eagle that chases away the man who brings the food every week. Well, doesn't that give you the idea that somebody else might have been feeding that eagle, exercising it? And most important, training it.
But Matilda trained it years ago.
And Irma's been training it for the last year and a half. Maybe coming down on weekends.
I certainly have not.
Then will you show us that arm of yours, Irma? For $5 million, people won't do anything. They'll do most anything, even smart people like lawyers.
Of all the crazy ideas, Valentine, what are you trying to prove?
McNeil, you told us you took care of the Jonathan's baggage when they first arrived. And probably the worst job you ever had, because they brought Bobo from South America. What a time you must have had getting him through customs and all. Now, why didn't you mention the bird earlier? Why didn't you tip us off? There was a perfect way to prove whether this girl was Matilda.
Yeah. Wanted us to prove it for him.
Now you're catching the ball, Riley. But he hinted a little with his double talk about the other kind of eagle.
That's right.
You haven't a shred of evidence.
A rich man dies. No friends in this country. No close relatives. Leaves a lonely daughter that nobody's paid much attention to. Suddenly she goes swimming and she drowns. Police can't find the body. But a little while later, a girl named Irma shows up in a mountain town nearby. And she does a great job of acting out amnesia.
I won't listen to any more of this.
Sister, your tough job was getting over here to train the eagle. You had to have help. Well, Riley, suppose that's why Juan Fernandez was brought up here. McNeil would have known about him from the Jonathans. Poor Fernandez thought he was just training a new devotee of the sport, getting somebody else ready to handle Bobo.
And then he found out what they were really up to.
Yeah, the minute Irma claimed to be Matilda, they had to get him out of the way. Come on, sister, the arm, let's see it.
Oh, get away from me.
You had to scratch that arm yourself. I remember the old scars Fernandez had on his arm. The real Matilda would have old scars from handling those birds all her life.
Go, you're hurting me.
Any cuts you've had are more recent, from the last year and a half. And a doctor can tell how old a scar is.
Mr. Valentine, I'm a lawyer. I look at logic. I live by it. Don't you see how ridiculous it is to assume I'd go ahead with such a plan when at any time the real Matilda's body might be recovered from that lake? I'd never get myself that far out on a limb.
Mr. McNeil, you've got a good argument there. So good it's going to hang you. The only way all this really makes sense, makes a neat, safe plan out of hiring Irma for her job, is that there is no body in that lake. It's probably around here someplace buried. And the police will never stop till they find it. Now that we know you murdered the real Matilda Jonathan a year and a half ago.
Yes. Yes, he killed her. I had nothing to do with it.
Look out, Valentine!
Grab it! Money, 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 Mr. Edsel, the scream of the eagle. Once McNeil sold everybody with that demonstration by Bobo, he would have just waltzed the phony Matilda through court. Together, they would have lived happily ever after.
I think you did a wonderful job, Mr. Valentine.
I don't quite understand the way you've been acting, Mr. Edsel.
Well, Miss Brooks, I was just taken in. I certainly didn't want to see any relative of mine.
You couldn't collect your $1,000 until the will was settled. You would have said Brooksy here was Matilda.
Oh, Mr. Valentine, I assure you a paltry little $1,000 to a man in my position.
Well, you did hire us, you know, and sooner or later you will be getting that $1,000 from the estate, so... George, since Mr. Edsel doesn't care about money, maybe we should give him a bill for our services right now.
No, wait a minute. Wait a minute.
For $1,000.
No!
Well, the eagle flies again, darling.
Angel, that's the scream of a stuck pig.
You're thinking about your vacation trip and wondering how you can get your car in good shape for safety and comfort without a big cash payment. Maybe you need a set of tires or a battery or both. But there's that problem of ready cash. Well, the solution is really easy. You can get tires and a battery on convenient budget terms at your standard station or independent Chevron gas station. Sure, pay as you drive over a period of months. Why not get those tires and that battery tomorrow? You'll have more peace of mind, more driving comfort, and more personal safety. Whether you're starting out on a vacation or not, ask tomorrow about the easy budget plan for your car's needs. Ask at an independent Chevron gas station or a standard station where they say and mean, we take better care of your car. Tonight's adventure of George Valentine has been brought to you by Standard Oil Company of California on behalf of independent Chevron gas stations and standard stations throughout the West. Robert Bailey is starred as George with Virginia Gregg as Brooksy. Let George Do It is written by David Victor and Jackson Gillis and directed by Don Clark. Wally Mayer is Lieutenant Riley. Ted Osborne was heard as McNeil. Jane Webb as Irma. Howard McNear as Edsel. Stan Waxman as Jenkins. And Bill James as the Eagle. The music is composed and presented by Eddie Dunstetter. Your announcer, John Heaston. Listen again next week, same time, same station, to Let George Do It. This is the Mutual Don Lee Broadcasting System.
Welcome back. Well, I love that they credited the person as the Eagle. That's always interesting when you hear that in old-time radio programs. It's true to note that with the end of radio, the ability to make animal noises has become far less of a marketable job skill even in Hollywood. Well, now we turn to listener comments and feedback. Comments from Podcast Alley. Nice and love the podcast. Makes the day just zoom by, and that's not always a bad thing. I agree. I was listening to a radio drama while waiting for my driver's license renewal. And having the time pass by, well, that was definitely a good thing. All right. Well, thanks so much for everybody listening out there. We will be back with you tomorrow with Sherlock Holmes, and next week another great episode of Let George Do It. And remember, if you've not filled out a listener survey this month, please fill out our new listener survey, survey.greatdetectives.net. Usually I save our JohnnyDollarAir.com ad for Friday when we're doing yours truly, Johnny Dollar. But we're going to be doing something a little different tomorrow, so I want to just do our ad today. And I want to encourage you, as you're making all your travel plans, remember the name JohnnyDollarAir.com. JohnnyDollarAir.com is powered by Priceline, the only travel company endorsed by William Shatner. And you have a couple of ways to save money, either by choosing from some great published fares or by naming your own price. In addition, you can save even more by booking a vacation package where you combine, for example, hotel, rental car, and airline tickets. In addition, there are frequent sales and discount offers, and I'd love to bring you what ones are going on, but because we record our shows 8 or 9 days behind whenever it airs, we don't know exactly what might be going on at a given time, so you could save even more money by going to JohnnyDollarAir.com. Well, now it's time for today's episode of Sherlock Holmes, The Copper Beeches.
makers of Clippercraft clothes for men and 924 leading retail stores from coast to coast, present the world's most famous detective, Sherlock Holmes. Our stories are based upon the character of Sherlock Holmes, created by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Sherlock Holmes is portrayed by John Stanley, Dr. Watson by Alfred Shirley, and the dramatizations are by Edith Miser.
Good evening, Mr. Harris. Good evening.
Good evening, Doctor.
Good heavens, what's all that pile of envelopes you've got there?
That, Dr. Watson, believe it or not, is fan mail.
You don't say. You mean some of our listeners have really bothered to write to us about these little reminiscences of mine?
Why, they have indeed, Doctor. What's more, most of our listeners seem to have a favorite Sherlock Holmes adventure they'd like to have you tell.
You don't say. Well, you know, Mr. Harris, I always aim to please. Any suggestions for tonight's story?
Hundreds, Doctor, hundreds, literally. And offhand, I'd say the most frequent request in this week's mail is for a story called The Copper Beeches.
The Adventure of the Copper Beeches. Well, as a matter of fact, that's always been one of my favorites, Mr. Harris, probably because of the curious secret we discovered in the attic. And may I say here, I'm always happy to get fan mail. And speaking of fan mail, Mr. Harris, that's something you're interested in, too. From another angle, of course. How about it?
Quite right, Dr. Watson. Mentioning fan mail naturally brings to mind Clippercraft clothes because of their millions of fans the country over. And there's good reason for these loyal followers. You wouldn't believe, yes, even clothing experts are amazed, that clothes as fine as Clippercraft are available at prices so exceptionally low. Now, things like this don't just happen. It's the result of manufacturing ingenuity and a really great distribution idea, the unique, the famous Clippercraft plan. Now, this plan concentrates the buying power of 924 leading stores across America, makes possible these truly phenomenal values at your own local independent store. In a pleasant atmosphere where you get friendly personal attention, you can buy Clippercraft suits at only $35 and $40, and a few special numbers at $43.75. Top coats and overcoats are only $30 to $40, and sport jackets only $24. You'll always insist on them if you compare Clippercraft clothes with clothes selling for many dollars more. Well, Dr. Watson, now what about the Copper Beeches?
It was a cold, gloomy morning in early spring. We were sitting on either side of a cheery fire in our rooms in Baker Street. Holmes had been silent and moody all morning, smoking his long cherrywood pipe, which usually displaced his favorite clay when he was in a disputatious mood. Altogether, he was in no sweet temper.
Matches, where are the matches? Look at that confounded fog. What happens to all the matches in this house, I'd like to know?
Oh, my dear Holmes, why not use the tongs and a live coal if you want to relight your pipe?
I burned myself.
For heaven's sake, Holmes, stop spluttering. I say something's annoying you. Why don't you get it off your chest?
It's that latest book of yours. Sensationalism, Watson. Rank sensationalism. You're always placing the emphasis on the crime. Crime is common. Logic is rare. You should stress the logic. You've degraded what should have been a course of lectures into a series of tales.
Now, really, Holmes, that's not logical. You're always complaining that crime is falling off. You say there are no first-class criminals left.
Quite. And therefore, if you depend on the crime to hold your readers, you'll soon be a back number. Criminals. They've lost all their enterprise and originality. My practice seems to be degenerating into an agency for recovering lost lead pencils and giving good advice to young ladies from boarding school.
Advice to the lovelord, eh?
Well, look at this. This note. It came in the Morning Post. The last straw, that's what it is. Here, read it.
Jimmy, let me see. Dear Mr. Holmes, I am very anxious to consult you as to whether I should or should not accept a situation which has been offered me as governess. I shall call at 10:30 tomorrow if I do not inconvenience you. Yours faithfully, Violet Hunter. But it's almost 11 now.
Exactly. She's late. Just like a woman.
I say, Holmes, this must be the young lady now walking briskly up the street.
Let me see. Brisk, purposeful manner, nice, bright, intelligent face.
Yes, she's stopping at our door.
There may be something in this case after all, my dear Watson. Yes, she's not the hysterical sort that makes a fuss over nothing. Shh, here she is. Come in.
Oh, how do you do? This is Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
Quite. And this is my colleague, Dr. Watson.
How do you do?
Won't you sit down?
Thank you. I trust you'll excuse my troubling you, Mr. Holmes, but I've had a very strange experience. And as I have no relations of any sort to advise me, I thought I'd best come to you.
I shall be happy to do anything I can.
I've been a governess for 5 years in the family of Colonel Spence Munro. He's been transferred to Nova Scotia, so that for the last few months I've been without a situation. But the money I had saved began to run out. I was at my wit's end.
Go on.
Yesterday, I called at a well-known employment agency run by a Miss Stoper. When I arrived, the outer office was filled with young ladies looking for situations. I was told to wait. I did so. After about half an hour, my name was called out. Well, the door to Miss Stoper's private office was ajar. Seated beside her was a prodigiously stout man with a round, smiling face and a heavy chin. His eyes were like two little slits.
Come in, my dear, come in. Mr. Rucastle, this is Miss... Oh, yes. What is your name, my dear?
Miss Hunter. Violet Hunter.
Oh, yes. Violet Hunter.
Capital, capital. I couldn't ask for anything better. I'm sure you will do, Miss Hunter.
I hope so, Mr. Rucastle.
You're looking for a situation as governess?
Yes, sir.
What salary do you ask?
Well, I had £4 a month in my last place.
£4? Sweating. Rank sweating. How anyone could have the audacity to offer that to a lady with such attraction, such accomplishments.
My accomplishments may not be all you expect, Mr. Rucastle. A little French, a little German, music and drawing.
My dear Miss Hunter, all that's beside the question. The point is, are you or are you not a lady?
Well...
The answer is yes. A lady fitted for the rearing of a child who may someday play a considerable part in the history of his country. Your salary with me, madam, would commence at £100 a year.
100? Oh, Mr. Rucastle.
Furthermore, it's my custom to advance my young ladies half their salary beforehand.
Well, may I ask where you live, Mr. Rucastle?
Hampshire. Charming rural spot. The Copper Beeches is the name of the place, 5 miles north of Winchester. The dearest old house.
And what would be my duties?
One child, a dear little romper aged 6. Oh, if you could see him killing cockroaches with a slipper. Smack, smack, smack. 3 gone before you could wink.
Well, my sole duty, then, is to take care of this child.
Well, I'm sure your good sense would suggest that you obey any little commands which my wife might give.
Well, I should be happy to make myself useful.
In dress, for example. We're fatty people. Fatty but kind-hearted. If you were asked to wear a particular dress that we might give you wouldn't object to our little whim, eh?
Why, no.
Or to sit here or there. That wouldn't be offensive to you?
Why, no.
Or to cut your hair short before you came to us?
My hair?
Oh, yes, it's quite essential. It's a little fancy of my wife's, you see, and ladies' fancies, my dear Miss Hunter, they must be consulted.
But my hair... Oh, no, I couldn't.
No? What a pity. In that case, Miss Stoper, I'd best inspect a few more of your young ladies.
Good day, then, Miss Hunter. I'm afraid you must consider yourself struck from our list. You can hardly expect us to exert ourselves to find another such opening for you.
But, Miss Stoper...
Good day, Miss Hunter.
Just a minute, Miss Stoper. Let's not be too hard on the young lady. After all, my request was a bit sudden. Perhaps, Miss Hunter, you'd like 24 hours in which to consider the matter. And in view of the fact that you have particularly beautiful hair, I might be willing to raise the salary to £120 a year to recompense you for our little eccentricities. Very unusual, my dear Miss Hunter. What do you make of it, Watson?
Well, perhaps the gentleman's wife's a lunatic, and he wishes to humor in her fancies in order to prevent an outbreak.
Possibly, Watson, possibly.
But the money, Mr. Holmes, the money. Oh, and I need it so.
Well, yes, the pay is good. Too good. Why should they give you £120 when they could have their pick for 40? There must be some strong reason.
But I have no choice.
Then you've made up your mind to accept?
I must. I thought if I told you the circumstances, you would understand afterwards if I wanted your help. I should feel so much stronger if I knew you were behind me.
Yes, you may carry that feeling away with you, and if at any time you should find yourself in danger...
Danger? But what danger could there be?
My dear Miss Hunter, it would cease to be a danger if we could define it. But remember, at any time, day or night, just telegraph, and I'll come to your help.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Holmes. Thank you.
You realize, Watson, it's been almost a week since Miss Hunter called, and we haven't heard a word from her. I don't like it.
Oh, nonsense, Holmes. She seemed to be a young lady who is quite capable of taking care of herself.
Just the same, I should never have permitted an unprotected female to accept a situation like that. Data. If I only had some data. Can't make bricks without straw.
Well, at any rate, nothing very dreadful can happen out in the open country like that.
That is where you're wrong, Watson. It's my experience that the vilest alleys in London do not present a more dreadful record of sin than does the smiling and beautiful countryside.
Holmes, you give me the creeps.
The pressure of public opinion is greatest in the towns. There's no lane so vile that the scream of a tortured child or the thud of a drunkard's blow does not beget sympathy and assistance from the neighbors. But the countryside, my dear Watson, filled with its lonely houses, think of the hellish cruelty, the hidden wickedness. Had our young friend gone to live in Winchester, I should not have this fear for her safety. It's the 5 miles of country which make the danger. See what that is, Watson.
Yes. Thank you, Mrs. Hudson. It's a telegram for you, Holmes.
Give it to me. It's from Miss Hunter.
Well, what does she say?
Come at once. We'll meet you at the Black Swan Hotel, Winchester, at 3 this afternoon. And at my wit's end, don't fail me.
What do you suppose has happened?
Hurry, Watson. We have no time to lose. There's a train from Waterloo Station in half an hour. If only we get to her in time. Yes, there's the Black Swan opposite the station.
And if I'm not mistaken, that is Miss Hunter waiting for us on the steps.
Oh, Mr. Holmes, it's so kind of you to come. And you too, Dr. Watson. I can't tell you how anxious I've been.
There, Miss Hunter. Watson, you'd better handle this situation. You're better with hysterical women than I am.
Holmes, you are a cold-blooded fish. It's not hysteria, it's relief. It's all right, Miss Hunter. We're here, you know.
I'm really not as foolish as I sound. It's just that the strain of the last 2 weeks. But I'll tell you about that as we go along. There's a shortcut to the copper beeches through the woods.
Come along, then. Now, Miss Hunter, if you'll tell us what's been happening since you arrived at the Rucastle household.
Well, Copper Beeches is a large, sinister-looking house, almost completely surrounded by woods. It depressed me from the moment of my arrival. I was met at the door by Mr. Rucastle and his wife.
And is she...
No, Mr. Holmes. She is not mad.
I see.
She's a small, pale-faced woman, much younger than Mr. Rucastle. In fact, I gather that she's his second wife. There was a daughter by the first marriage, a girl now over 20, but she's not living at the house. Mr. Rucastle said that she could not get along with her stepmother, so he sent her to America, to Philadelphia.
America? How extraordinary.
And does Mrs. Rucastle strike you as a difficult woman to get along with?
Oh, no, Mr. Holmes. She's shy and rather quiet. More than once I've surprised her in tears. At first I thought it might be worry over the disposition of her child.
What's the matter with his disposition?
Well, he's badly spoiled. He's an ungovernable temper and seems to take a great delight in torturing birds and small animals.
Pleasant little beast.
And the rest of the household?
There's only one servant. Toller is his name. A rough, uncouth man with a perpetual smell of drink about him. Why they keep him, I don't know. Except perhaps because he's the only one who can manage Carlo.
Carlo?
Carlo is a huge, underfed mastiff that's kept chained in the stables during the day. But at night they let him out. He's a terrible beast. Even Mr. Rucastle is afraid of him. Well, I'm sure he'd tear any trespasser to bits.
I wonder why Mr. Rucastle desires such ferocious protection.
I'm sure I don't know. Unless there is something on the top floor of the West Wing that he wants to hide.
The West Wing, eh?
Yes. The door that leads into it is opposite my room. It's kept securely locked. I have noticed Mr. Rucastle going in and out a couple of times. The windows of that wing are all shuttered, too. And locked from the inside.
Looks nasty to me, Holmes.
Watson, don't interrupt.
For the second day after my arrival, immediately after breakfast, Mr. Rucastle asked me to put on a dress which had been laid out on the bed for me.
What was it like?
It wasn't a new dress, Mr. Holmes, but the material was excellent and of a particularly brilliant shade. An electric blue.
Oh, charming color, I thought.
I put it on and went down to the living room. Mr. Rucastle had placed a chair for me by the front window.
Sit here with your back to the window, you may read this book aloud. A French novel. I think we'll find it most amusing. After an hour or so, you may go back upstairs and change to your own clothes.
But, Mr. Rucastle, I don't understand.
Who asked you to understand? Just do as I say.
Strange. Very strange, Miss Hunter.
I've had to sit there in the window for an hour every morning since then. As time passed, I became more and more curious. Why were they so careful to keep my face turned away from the window? Naturally, I was consumed with desire to see what was going on behind my back. But today I devised a means. I noticed at breakfast that Mr. Rucastle had had quite a few drinks. A happy thought seized me. My hand mirror had been broken. I concealed a piece of it in my handkerchief and later in my book, feeling sure that Mr. Rucastle was too drunk to notice. By holding the book up, I was able to see everything behind me.
And what did you see?
At first, there was nothing. At the second glance, however, I saw a young man in a grey suit leaning against a railing which bordered our field. He was looking earnestly in my direction. Mr. Rucastle must have noticed my surprise, for he burst out angrily.
Really, Miss Hunter, your attention must be wandering. That's the second time you've read that passage. Furthermore, there's an impertinent fellow up the road who keeps staring at you. Is it a friend of yours?
Oh, no, Mr. Rucastle. I don't know anyone around here.
Kindly turn round and motion him to go away.
But wouldn't it be better not to notice him?
Do as I tell you. I really don't encourage you to have any followers.
Oh, very well, Mr. Rucastle. There.
Impertinent fellow. That'll be all for this morning, Miss Hunter. May go to your room.
But, Mr. Rucastle, I hope you don't think...
Go to your room, I say.
Yes, sir.
And after this, you needn't bother to wear that blue dress.
I did as I was told, Mr. Holmes. But on the way upstairs, I noticed that the door to the west wing had the key still in the lock.
Rucastle must have been drunk to forget that, eh, Holmes?
Quiet, Watson.
I'll admit my curiosity was greater than my sense of caution. I opened the door and mounted the stairs to the attic. In the hall at the top of the house, I found 3 doors. The middle one barred with the end of an old iron bedstead.
Good Lord.
It was terribly spooky up there. Once something brushed against my face. Oh, what was that? Oh, it must have been a bat. Oh, dear. Is there anyone in there? Who's there? Can I help you?
So, it was you then. I thought it must be when I saw the door open.
Oh, Mr. Rucastle, I'm so frightened.
My dear young lady, what frightened you?
Well, I was foolish enough to come into this vacant wing, but it's so lonely and eerie, and a bat swooped down into my face.
Is that all?
What else could there be?
Why do you suppose I keep that door locked?
Well, I'm sure I don't know.
It's to keep people out who have no business there, you see.
Well, I'm sure if I'd known...
Well, you know now, my dear young lady. And if you ever put your foot over that threshold again, I'll throw you to the mastiffs.
What a dreadful experience.
Mr. Holmes, I feel sure there's someone locked in that room. Someone who's unhappy, perhaps tortured. Oh, good heavens, it's almost 5. I promised to be back by 6. Mr. and Mrs. Rucastle are going out. Mr. Rucastle should discover where I've been.
You've acted like a brave and sensible girl, Miss Hunter.
Yes, indeed you have.
Dr. Watson and I will hang around until the Rucastles have left.
Well, that should be around 7.
Good. I don't imagine the Mastiff will be let loose until they return.
Oh, no, Mr. Holmes. It would be too dangerous for them to get back to the house.
Excellent. We'll hope that Toller's still drunk. At any rate, you must get us into the house. We must explore the West Wing.
I'll do my best, Mr. Holmes. And now I must hurry. Goodbye, gentlemen.
Goodbye, Miss Hunter. Well, my dear Holmes, what do you make of it all? The blue dress and the man in front of the house.
Obviously, they've had her impersonating someone. Someone young, whose hair had been cut off during an illness. That someone is probably the person imprisoned in the West Wing.
How sinister.
That is not the most sinister part of Miss Hunter's story, Watson.
No? What is then?
The unpleasant disposition of the child.
But what has that got to do with it?
My dear Watson, as a medical man, you're always gaining light as to the tendencies of a child by a study of the parents. Heredity is a science that can be worked backwards as well. You can get a good insight into the character of the parents by studying the children. This child is cruel. Abnormally cruel. He probably inherits it from one of his parents. I only hope nothing serious happens before 7 o'clock.
Gracious, what a night. The first thunderstorm of the season. Say, listen to that dog. He has an ugly temper.
Look at the copper beeches swaying in the wind. Yes, there's Miss Hunter standing in the front doorway.
She's waving to us. The coast must be clear.
Come in. Goodness, you must be soaked to the skin.
What's that pounding?
It's Toller. He was just going out to release the dog. I sent him to the wine cellar, then locked him in.
Splendid.
I managed to get Toller's keys this afternoon, too. He was quite drunk. They're duplicates of Mr. Rucastle's.
Better and better. But come along upstairs. We have no time to waste. You got your revolver handy, Watson?
Yes.
Good.
Good heavens. That lightning must have hit near here.
One of the copper beeches, no doubt.
Now, which key? Ah, this one, I fancy. That's right. Oh, there's nothing here. Come along.
Listen to that rain on the roof.
The middle door, you said. Hello in there. No answer. I don't like that. Watson, help me remove this bedstead.
Right.
That's right. It's tied at one end. Cut the rope. That's it.
The door's locked.
We must break it in then. Come on. 1, 2, 3. Hello. There's no one here.
That villain Rucastle must have made away with his prisoner.
That's your right. She's probably been carried off.
But how?
Through the skylight. It's still open. Shove that table over here.
All right. What are you going to do?
Stand on it, of course. Yes. 2 pairs of footprints. There's a ladder resting against the eaves. So that's how he did it.
But that's not possible. The ladder wasn't there when the Rucastles went away.
Then he must have come back.
He's a dangerous and clever man. Listen. Yes, I think I hear his footsteps on the stairs.
Oh, Mr. Holmes! It's Mr. Rucastle! He'll kill us all!
I thought I'd find you here.
Villain, what have you done with your daughter?
I'm the one that should ask that, you thieves, you robbers. I've caught you. I'll fix you. Carlo!
He's gone for the dog! We'll be torn to shreds!
Quick, Watson, we must close the front door.
Let me out! Mr. Rucastle has loosed the dog! He'll get him! Mr. Rucastle! Quick, or it'll be too late!
It's Toller. Here are the keys, Miss Hunter. Let him out.
All right.
Quick, Watson, give me your revolver.
Careful you don't hit the man by mistake.
Shut up and stand back, Watson.
Oh, Mr. Holmes! Oh, thank heavens you've done it. You've killed Carlo. Oh, I thought it was too late. Oh, it's too horrible. I think I feel...
No, Miss Hunter. You're out of danger. Just you go upstairs and pack your bag. Dr. Watson and I are going to take you back to town with us on the 9 o'clock train. Now, Watson, suppose you see if there's anything you can do for that villain Rucastle. He's not worth saving, but I suppose your conscience won't rest unless you have a try at it.
And now, before Sherlock Holmes sums up for Dr. Watson, suppose we sum up for Clipper Craft Clothes. Regardless of price, you'll go a long way before you find clothes as fine as Clipper Craft. Low prices are just half the story. Low prices like Clipper Craft suits at only $35 and $40, with a few special numbers at $43.75. Like top coats and overcoats at only $30 to $40, and sport jackets at only $24. No, it's what you get for what you spend that makes Clipper Craft values remarkable. Correct styling, perfect fit, truly custom-like tailoring, and rich, long-wearing fabrics. All made possible by the unique Clipper Craft plan that concentrates the buying power of 924 leading stores across the country, resulting in tremendous savings in manufacturing and distribution costs. Remember, all this is available to you in your own local independent store, where friendly attention is traditionally yours. Selling beautifully tailored, expensive clothes at inexpensive low prices at the nation's finest independent stores is the great big idea behind the Clippercraft plan. That's why men who know insist on Clippercraft clothes. So be sure to visit the Clippercraft store in your city.
The leading stores in the metropolitan area that bring you Clippercraft clothes are Saks 34th, Broadway at 34th Street, Manhattan, Abraham and Strauss, Brooklyn, the Boulevard Men's Shop, Kresge, Newark, New Jersey, and the B&B Clothes Shop, 16408 Jamaica Avenue, Jamaica. These great, courteous, and friendly stores are proud to add their names to that of Clippercraft in the label of your suit, top coat, sports jacket, and overcoat.
So you think, Watson, that Rucastle will live?
I'm afraid so, Holmes.
Oh, I'm so glad to get away from that dreadful place.
Yes, I'm sure you are, Miss Hunter. I say, Holmes, just what did happen to the prisoner in the West Wing? And who was it?
It's all disgustingly simple, my dear Watson. It was Rucastle's daughter, as I suspected. It seems that she'd inherited some money from her mother, and when she threatened to get married and take her money with her, her father tried to get her to sign a paper giving the money to him. He worried her until she got brain fever and had to have all her hair cut off.
Well, where did you get that information?
From Toller. In spite of everything, Miss Rucastle's young man stuck to her, and she to him. After that, Mr. Rucastle locked his daughter up and brought Miss Hunter down from London in order to impersonate her, to get rid of a persistent suitor. This young gentleman, however, was a persevering chap.
Oh, good for him.
Having greased Toller's palm very thoroughly, he learned the true state of affairs. And with the help of Toller and a long stepladder, he rescued his fiancée.
It's really quite romantic, isn't it, Holmes?
You and your romance, Watson. You're a regular old woman.
Well, I'm glad we were able to help the poor thing, but I wouldn't go back to that house again, not for twice the salary.
Oh, that reminds me, Miss Hunter. I was talking to a friend of mine about you the other day. She has a private school in Walsall. I believe she said she had an opening for you.
Oh, Mr. Holmes, you're not a cold-blooded fish at all. You're a darling.
Now, my dear, it's quite inconsequential. Really, you know.
Well, do I say...
Oh, shut up, Watson.
And what, may I ask, have you in store for us next week, Dr. Watson?
Next week, suppose I tell you the story of a curious cadaver which was found in some recently excavated Roman baths. The dead body was clothed in the tunic and toga of a Roman senator.
In the last stages of decomposition, I suppose.
Oh, no, not at all, Mr. Harris. The body had the appearance of having died not more than a few hours previous.
The makers of Clippercraft clothes and 924 leading stores from coast to coast have brought you another in the new series of broadcasts featuring the world's most famous detective, Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes is produced and directed by Basil Lochran, with special music by Albert Berman. If you don't know your Clippercraft dealer, write Clippercraft, 200 Fifth Avenue, New York City. Be sure to listen next week to Sherlock Holmes in The Cadaver in the Roman Toga. If you'd like to attend the Sherlock Holmes broadcasts in New York, see your local Clippercraft dealer, and he'll tell you how to obtain your tickets. Clippercraft clothes. This is the Mutual Broadcasting System.
Welcome back. Well, it was interesting that this was such a popular choice to do. My favorite, of course, I've mentioned several times, is the Red-Headed League, though that just tends to be a bit of a matter of sentimentality, I guess. But also pretty big on the Norwood Builder. I think that's a fascinating story. And, of course, the Speckled Band. Let me just say this. If you do have a particular favorite Sherlock Holmes story, let me know. We won't necessarily be able to play it, but it'd be interesting to find out what some folks' favorite Holmes story is. So you can just email that in to me at box13@greatdetectives.net. I did see the ITV adaptation of this story, and if you get a chance to see it, they did a fantastic job with it, and really the actor they had playing Mr. Rucastle just made the episode work so well. All right, well, now on to your listener comments and feedbacks. Love this show, and Great Detectives is a really great podcast. Appreciate all those comments on Podcast Alley, as well as votes that don't necessarily come with comments. Definitely helps. You can go to podcastalley.greatdetectives.net. Give us a call, 208-991-4783. Encourage you to become one of our friends on Facebook, facebook.com/Radio Detectives, and be sure to complete our listener survey, survey.greatdetectives.net. Well, tomorrow we've got yours truly, Johnny Dollar, ready to roll with our first full John Lunn episode. And then join us back here next Thursday for another episode of Sherlock Holmes. Well, this episode of the Great Detectives of Old Time Radio is brought to you by you, our faithful listeners. Thank you so much for all your support. And we do have a couple of listener requests. Michael Galea writes in, "Hi, Adam. Here's my vote for your podcast for October. It is my birthday on the 21st. I know you can't wish me a happy birthday on your podcast, but I will be listening to the best podcast on the web." Well, actually, no, we got you covered, so happy birthday to Michael. I also received an email in a similar vein from Gwendolyn, and she writes, I discovered your podcast early last fall, and I turned my cousin Emily onto it last summer. I finally caught up with you right before leaving the country in September. Now I'm home. I should be current again by the end of this weekend. I don't know how far along Emily is, as she has less free time than me. I've always enjoyed the podcast. I know Emily has too. Now for the reason I'm writing. Could you please include a personal greeting in one of your shows when you record the show that will air on October 21st? And basically what I'd like to do is to congratulate Emily Chris on their wedding day. They got married in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. So congratulations to the happy couple. She adds, I heard yesterday that you are hoping to hit 1,000 friends on Facebook by your anniversary and birthday, and you can count both Emily and me in that number. Thanks for a great podcast, Gwen. Well, Gwen, thank you so much. We didn't hit it on my birthday, which is the anniversary of our first pilot episode, but we still have an opportunity. We get about 25 more friends, maybe a little less by the time this actually airs, by October 26th. So we're getting pretty close. Thank you so much. Well, now it's time for today's episode of yours truly, Johnny Dollar. And the first episode, the Singapore arson matter, that aired on November 28th of 1952, is actually not in circulation. So we begin with, this is the second John Lunn episode. It's called The James Clayton Matter.
From Hollywood, it's time now for John Lund as Johnny Dollar.
Hi, Chet Graham, Johnny.
Who?
Wake up, boy. Chet Graham, Claims, New York Mutual.
Oh, hi, Chet. How are things?
Bad. Johnny, I have to make a little trip out to the coast on a phony claim. I'll be gone about 4 days, but I need someone to hold down my office while I'm away. Can you do it?
Oh, that's not my line, Chet. You know that.
Well, make it your line, Johnny. Somebody has to be here. Look, you can live in my apartment. You can use my tickets to wish you were here. You can even take my girl if you want. New York's swell this time of year.
Can't you get anybody there?
Oh, everybody's got the flu or busy or something.
When do you want to leave for the coast?
I'd like to get out on the noon plane today.
Well, I can be down there by 11.
Good. We'll probably miss each other, but just walk right in the office and make yourself at home. I'll call you from L.A.
Have a good trip. By the way, what does your girl look like?
Even your best dream was never that good.
Just leave her phone number on your desk. John Lund, in a transcribed adventure of the man with the action-packed expense account, America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Expense account submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to New York Mutual Underwriters Limited, Rockefeller Center, New York City. Attention, Mr. Chester Graham, claims and adjustments. Dear Chet, you probably read some of this in the Los Angeles papers, but they don't have the whole story. Maybe they'll never get it all. I hope not. I found out part of it, stumbled into the rest of it, and I'm trying to forget all of it. The following is an accounting of expenditures during your 4-day absence in my investigation of the James Clayton matter. Expense account item 1, $14.35 transportation Hartford to New York, where, as per your advice, I walked in your office, sat down, and made myself at home. And where, 15 minutes later, I had a caller.
Mr. Dollar, is it?
That's right.
The girl at the reception desk said Mr. Graham was out of town and that you were taking his place.
Yes. Please sit down.
Well, thank you, but I don't have time. I'm Miss Stebbins, Dr. James Clayton's nurse. He asked me to see you.
I see.
He gave me these policy numbers. He said that your company wrote these policies and that he'd like to talk to one of you.
Well, certainly, Miss Stebbins. He can come by anytime.
No, you don't understand. Dr. Clayton can't get away from the office. We're terribly rushed, and I really should be getting back myself. He's there all alone.
Well, do you know what it's about, Miss Stebbins?
No. The doctor's been acting strangely all day. He had me cancel all of his outside calls, and then he sent me here. He said to explain that it was very urgent. I'm very concerned for him.
The tall, pale brunette girl in the crisply starched uniform and cape was certainly concerned about something. She bit her lip, forced out a wan, unprofessional smile, and started to cry. I pretended not to notice all this as we got on the elevator and went down into the street. However, 10 minutes later, when we arrived at a suite of offices in the Pelroy building, I had to notice Dr. James Clayton. He met us at the door. Most of his costume was medically correct, white coat and carrying a stethoscope in one hand. But in the other, he brandished a .32 Ivor Johnson. The safety was off.
Oh, it's you.
Yes, Doctor. This is Mr. Dollar from the insurance office.
Claims investigation?
Yeah.
Oh, fine. Jane, this would be a good time for you to get some lunch, don't you think?
Well, Doctor, I have all of those lab reports to
No,
write.
go ahead, Janie. Like a good girl, I want to speak with Mr. Dollar alone.
Of course, Doctor, if you say so. Goodbye, Mr. Dollar.
Goodbye.
Come in, Mr. Dollar. Sit down. Very fine girl, Jane. She's worked for me a long time. Very fine.
Do you always meet her at the door with firearms, Doctor?
Oh, this. Well, all I can say is this is a ridiculous mess. My life's been threatened by a man who has definite homicidal tendencies. This, I don't even know how to load it. I look foolish, I suppose.
A threat on your life, Doctor, comes under the heading of police business.
I know that very well. And I would go directly to the police, only... Well, it is a delicate matter. You seem dubious already.
No, just curious. Go on, please.
Well, several months ago, I attended a patient named Florence Harmon. A thorough examination disclosed that her poor physical condition wasn't based on any organic disorder, but rather upon an emotional instability. Now, this, I finally discovered, was brought about by her marriage to an erratic, ruthless, ill-tempered man, Benjamin Harmon. I could only advise that she divorce him immediately.
Well, that's somewhat extreme, Doctor. Are you always certain of advice like that?
Well, in this case, there's no other answer. I approached Mr. Harmon on the subject last night at his home. I explained that Mrs. Harmon's health, her very life, is in jeopardy. And more's involved here than keeping intact a union which has nothing but legality as a binding force.
I see. But Mr. Harmon doesn't care for somatics, huh?
He attacked me. If it hadn't been for the assistance of Mrs. Harmon and a servant, he might have choked me to death. When I left, he threatened me.
Then you should have called the police.
Yes, I've thought of that. But look, if you approached Harmon in the right manner, Dollar, he might discard his ideas of violence.
Well, you're the expert on homicidal tendencies, but Best thing I can see for you is to prefer assault charges and have him locked up.
I know all that, but it's for Mrs. Harmon's sake. Please understand, she's been through a shattering ordeal. Look, Mr. Dollar, would you go see him and talk to him? If you think he means it, really, then I'll call the police and prefer charges against him.
The Harmon residence was in Westchester, a story-and-a-half colonial with all the trimmings. There was a 51 Cadillac in the open garage and a 52 Ford station wagon in front of the house.
Yes?
This one didn't have a white coat or stethoscope, but he had a gun.
What is it?
Mr. Harmon?
I'm Harmon. What do you want?
Mr. Harmon, my name is Dollar. And
Dollar, huh? Get out of my way! Oh!
Here, Mr. Dollar. Drink this. Easy now.
Oh.
Take it, please. Oh, you had quite a blow. Try a little more. It should make you feel better.
What was...
Who? Oh, you can bring suit against him, against us. You can do anything you want to, Mr. Dollar. He's just ungovernable. He could easily have killed you.
You, Mrs. Harmon?
Yes.
Your husband think I was the Iceman?
Oh, I don't know what he thought. I just heard him yell at you, and when I came to the door, you were lying there, and he'd taken the station wagon and left. Why, last night he even attacked my personal physician and threatened to kill him. I don't know what's gotten into him. You'd better sit down.
Oh, it's getting better. Where'd he go?
Heaven only knows. Mad. That's what he is, Mr. Dollar. Mad. He's liable to do anything. I'm scared. I'm scared stiff.
I called Dr. Clayton, who promised to notify the police. It was about 5:45 when I got back to his office. A broad-shouldered man in a tweed suit was in the reception room.
Hi. You Dr. Clayton?
No. Hey, don't I know you?
I was thinking the same about you. Wait, Dollar?
Yeah.
Tom Bassman, Central Division.
Oh, sure. How are you, Tom?
Fine. Hey, you must be the one.
What?
This Dr. Clayton called downtown about a threat, said his insurance company had advised him to report it.
That's right.
Well, where is he?
Well, he should be here, Tom. What's his nurse say?
I rang the buzzer. No one around at all. What's this all about?
A man named Benjamin Harmon's threatened the doctor's life. I met him myself. He's carrying a gun, and he looked dangerous to me. I just came from his house.
He's still there?
No.
I better phone in and get a pickup out on him. When the doctor shows up, I'll get a complaint. Oh, hello.
Hello. Why, Mr. Dollar.
Hello, Miss Stebbins.
Is Dr. Clayton here?
This is Sergeant Bassman. We want to see him ourselves.
You're a police officer?
That's right, miss.
I heard him talking to you on the phone. Is anything the matter?
Just want to see him.
Well, goodness, he sent me out to pick up these things. He was here when I left. Oh.
What?
Perhaps he had an emergency.
Well, is there any way we can find out?
Well, if he had one, it would be right here on the pad, because I always have to know. That's funny.
What?
He's on an emergency call, 1213 Alessandro Street.
Can I see that, please?
Uh-huh.
There's no name on this, Miss Stebbins. Do you recognize the address at all?
No, I don't. The doctor just wouldn't take a random emergency call unless it were very unusual.
This might be unusual. Dollar, how bad off did you think Harmon was?
Mad. Had a gun. Cracked me. Plenty rough.
Well, this is in the warehouse district.
Think we better go down there?
I think so. Wait.
What?
1213. Well, it'd have to be that vacant lot over there. This one's 1240, and the rest belong to that warehouse.
Yeah. Tom. That car. MD on the license plate?
Yeah. Well, it might be Clayton's.
Yeah.
It's Clayton's car, all right.
He must be around here somewhere looking for 1213.
Yeah. Well, let's have a peek.
Tom.
I see. He's had it. it Clayton?
Yeah, that's him.
Some emergency this was.
Yeah.
We'll return to yours truly, Johnny Dollar, in just a moment. On weekends, it seems everybody takes his car out on the highways. Some drivers are less experienced than others. They either speed or poke along with a whole stream of cars behind them. Both types are a menace to safety. Whatever you do, be moderate, be obedient to all traffic laws. Be careful, use your head, and don't take chances. Now, with our star, John Lund, we bring you the second act of yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
An hour of questioning in the neighborhood turned up two people who recalled hearing the shots. And one man remembered seeing a man who answered Benjamin Harmon's description loitering in the vicinity of a nearby bar earlier in the evening. Obviously, Dr. Clayton had been lured to his death by the murderer who had telephoned him, pretended to need a physician, waited till the victim appeared, and then shot him down. Expense account item 3, $11.65. A good dinner, 3 martinis, tip, and thinking at Toots Shores. After which, I strolled over to the Pelroy building. Expense account item 4, $5 even. Bribed watchman.
I shouldn't be doing this, you know. Might lose my job over it.
I appreciate it.
But since you're from the insurance company, I guess you're all right.
Just looking around is all.
Too bad about the doctor. Nice fellow.
Very.
What do you think you'll find? A policeman been here till almost an hour ago, poking around.
You know if they found anything?
Sure.
Well, what?
Doctor's emergency kit. Heard him say he didn't take it with him when he went out on that emergency. Don't be too long.
The business about the emergency kit started me thinking. I opened Clayton's file drawer and skimmed through every patient's name from Abbott to Zabrowski. He'd been a thorough man, and from all evidences operated an efficient medical office. However, he had no medical history in his files on Florence Harmon. There was nothing to indicate that she had ever been a patient of his. On the other hand, there was an entry a year before which showed that he had examined, treated, and discharged Benjamin Harmon as a patient. I think these two developments supplied me with all of the curiosity I needed for a while. Nurse Jane Stebbins' home address was duly noted on Dr. Clayton's phone book. Oakdale House. Surprisingly enough, on Oak Street. Special rates for nurses, room 210.
Oh, Mr. Dollar.
How do you feel?
Not too good, Mr. Dollar. I just got home a little while ago. They kept me down there pretty long. Do you want to come in?
Thanks. I don't want to keep you up.
It isn't much of a place, is it? I mean, I haven't straightened it up for days, it seems. I'm sorry.
Things like this aren't easy. I know. Don't apologize to me.
Sit down, Mr. Dollar. Have they caught Mr. Harmon yet?
No, not yet. Miss Stebbins, you worked for Dr. Clayton a long while, didn't you?
5 years.
Then you should be able to tell me who he was going to marry.
Marry? Well, I didn't know. I have no idea.
He'd already made arrangements for a honeymoon.
Honeymoon?
Look, reservations on the Ile de France for next April. I found them in his desk drawer. Confirmed to Dr. and Mrs. James Clayton. Well?
What difference does it make?
I don't know. Seems strange that you've been with him for such a long time and didn't know about this.
Or
did you? All right. What about Mrs. Harmon?
Well...
Look, Miss Stebbins, things are wrong all the way down the line about your doctor's death. about what happened before it. It'll come out sooner or later.
I suppose it will. It's awful to say this, Mr. Dollar, but Mrs. Harmon was the only one Dr. Clayton saw socially. And she, of course, is married.
Of course. And the good doctor advised her to get a divorce. You meet her when Mr. Harmon was a patient of his?
Yes, that's right. They became friendly.
But Mrs. Harmon was never a patient.
No, never, just her husband.
What can you tell me about Mr. Harmon?
Well, really, all I know is he came in to see Dr. Clayton a few times. Over a year ago, I guess. Then after he saw what was happening between Mrs. Harmon and Dr. Clayton, he stopped coming in. I sent a copy of his medical history to another doctor.
But Dr. Clayton had been seeing Mrs. Harmon all this time.
It's awful to say this now, Mr. Dollar. The doctor's dead. I'm no moralist. We're all human. It's happened before. Married people have been attracted by others. I'm tired, Mr. Dollar.
Sure. Do you have any idea why I was called in today?
At first, I didn't. Well, of course, it happened. The police told me about Mr. Harmon's threats. But I don't understand what you're trying to do. The police want Mr. Harmon, and what does it all mean?
It means the wrong man was killed.
Please, Mr. Dollar.
I should have tumbled to it right away, but your husband fit the part too well.
Now, look here. I've been through quite enough today with the police looking for Ben. I don't have...
You and Clayton. I was going to be the star witness when the state tried him for shooting your husband. Whatever I said as a material witness would back up his self-defense plea and get him off on a justifiable homicide. Isn't that it?
I tell you, I won't listen.
And you and the doctor would sail to France and live happily ever after. What's the matter? Wouldn't your husband give you a divorce?
You won't listen. Go ahead. If you say it's that way, Mr. Dollar, and you know everything, I know you know everything, then it must be that way.
Yeah, only it got fouled up. Your husband did shoot your doctor boyfriend after all.
Get out of here. Get out of my house. You can't prove anything.
You're right, Mrs. Harmon. I can't prove anything. Not a thing. They catch your husband and they'll put him away for it. But you have something to live with for the rest of your life. Or maybe you didn't really love your doctor after all.
Get out! Get out! Leave me alone! Leave me
alone! What? Well, that's it, Sergeant. I want to know if people can really get by with this kind of thing in our courts of law. If and when you pick up Benjamin Harmon, will he have any kind of defense?
Oh, we'll get him, Dollar. The others I can't answer. What you just told me is really a thing. I don't see how any lawyer can do much for a guy who threatens another man's life and finally guns him down, do you?
Supposing I could prove that Harmon was being set up as a patsy, that the doctor was really supposed to gun him down and plead self-defense.
Up to the judge and the jury. When we get Harmon, he'll be arraigned and indicted on first-degree murder charges. Don't worry about that. And if it goes that far, it generally means he'll get the works. After all, we're pretty sure he shot and killed the doctor.
Hang up, Dollar.
Huh?
You still there, Dollar?
Hang up or I'll blow your head off.
Benjamin Harmon wasn't kidding. He was blazing mad. He had a gun, and I knew he wasn't afraid to use it.
I was across the street when you left my place a little while ago. Fixing up another deal, were you?
I don't know what you're talking about, Harmon.
I followed you here so we could have this talk. And we're going to have it, you and I.
You ought to put that gun away and let them take you. They'll shoot you down if they see you.
Nobody's going to shoot me down, not yet. Now, where's your office?
Hartford, Connecticut.
I mean here. Where do you practice here? Come on.
I don't practice anything here. My office is in Hartford. This apartment belongs to a friend of mine. I'm standing in for him here while he's out of town.
Where's his office?
New York Mutual Liability.
I mean his law office. I want to get down there and see how much...
Hold on now. I'm not a lawyer. My friend's not a lawyer. We're insurance investigators.
Where's the office?
I tell you,
Listen. Clayton called me this morning and said a lawyer named Dollar was on his way over to talk to me about divorcing Florence.
If you hadn't started swinging that gun butt around, I'd have told you why I was there. I think I know why Clayton called you and told you that, but I don't...
You and he were trying to pull something to take my wife away from me. I know that much.
You're wrong, Harmon. I didn't know anything about that.
Nobody takes my wife away from me.
Now, that's the kind of temper that got you in all the trouble you're in. Look, you can shoot me here and I'll be number 2. But they'll get you real easy here.
You know I didn't kill Clayton?
How do I know you didn't kill him? You threatened him. Half a dozen people heard you threaten him. I have an idea why you did it, and you might have been right, but murder for any reason...
Shut up! You're in on it somewhere. You know who did kill him, and you're going to clear me, or I'll whip it out of you, Dollar. I'll whip it out of you!
Why, you crazy... All right. Here. Try this. Go on. I'm tired of fooling with you. Now get on your feet. Well, you got 1 point in your favor. This gun hasn't been fired. Do you have another one?
No.
Here, take another drink. Now, you have a chance to talk to me right now. I don't think the police will be interested in much you have to say.
I wanted to kill Clayton, but I didn't. Nobody will believe that. I know I've got a temper, and I've tried to control it, but I didn't kill him.
I'm not impressed with that. I want facts. Where were you when Clayton was shot?
How do I know? I didn't know what time he was shot.
Say between 5 and 6 today.
I was out getting mad. Fried.
Where? Who saw you?
No. After we met, I was so sore, I jumped in the car and went out and bought myself a jug. I know it sounds crazy, but I spent most of the time just sitting in the car down by the docks, just drinking and thinking and getting mad. I don't know what it was. I don't know when I walked over to the saloon, phoned Clayton. I told him I was on Alessandro Street and to come on down. I wanted to have a showdown.
You mean you wanted him to come down so you could kill him?
Maybe I did have that on my mind. I don't know. I waited an hour or so, but he never showed up. When I called back at his office, nobody answered. So I climbed back in my car, and that's where I heard about my being wanted for killing him. It was on the newscast. I didn't do it, Dollar. I swear I didn't. The others I knew about, and I didn't kill them.
What others?
Florence always had other friends. Yes, I don't love her anymore, but I don't know. Maybe I hate her for all of it. When a man doesn't let part of his life walk away from him, I wouldn't give her a divorce. If I had let her get away with it, it would have been too much for me to hold.
Even though you didn't love her and you knew she didn't love you?
Yes.
That sounds stupid.
Maybe. I loved her once. She loved me the way two people only love at certain times.
Hell, no sense yet.
I'm not well, Dollar. Clayton gave me a year. Another doctor, 18 months. Finished anemia. The two of them could have waited at least till I was dead, couldn't they? Couldn't they?
I found some sleeping pills in your medicine cabinet, and I fed him a couple with some hot cocoa. He dropped off to sleep in your bed while I made some phone calls, confirming what he just told me. Expense account item 5, taxi fare, $4.05 back to Oak Street, to Oakdale House. Special rates for nurses.
I thought you'd be back. I'm glad it's you. I think somehow you're the kind of man who understands things.
I'll be a good listener. Go ahead.
When I first started as his nurse, I fell in love with him. I guess it's an old story. Terribly old and corny. But then he met her. I heard him tell you all those lies today about treating Mrs. Harmon. I was out in the hall. Didn't have any idea exactly what he intended to do until I heard him call Mr. Harmon right after you left. He told him you were a lawyer.
He knew Harmon was upset enough to attack me.
Doctor was very good about knowing what people would do. I was here when Mr. Harmon called him tonight. Doctor took the call and wrote it down on the pad. I saw him put the gun inside his coat, and I knew he was going down there to shoot Mr. Harmon. So I followed him. He was walking around in the dark looking for Mr. Harmon with a gun in his hand. I ran up to him and pleaded with him not to be crazy, that she wasn't worth it. Then he said he was going to kill me, too. He struggled and the gun went off I don't know how many times. Then I came back here and pretended I'd been down at the drugstore.
I see. What's your first name?
Jane.
Jane, Dr. Clayton made all sorts of elaborate plans so he'd have a self-defense plea. But you don't have to go to all that trouble. You can prove self-defense. He had the gun. He was going to use it on you.
I beg your pardon.
I can help you, Jane. It'd go second degree or manslaughter, suspended. You didn't mean to shoot him, but he meant to shoot you.
No. You're nice. But I can't get off.
What?
I guess they haven't found her yet. I killed Mrs. Harmon an hour ago.
Expense account item 6, same as 1, transportation back to Hartford. I didn't spend any other money, Chet. I didn't meet your girl, and I didn't see the musical. I didn't go anyplace. I just sat in your office and looked at the walls for the next 3 days. I'm leaving this where you'll see it when you come in tomorrow morning. Settle up and don't call me for a long time. A long, long time, if you call at all. Expense account total, $56.35. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, stars John Lund in the title role and is written by E. Jack Newman with music by Eddie Dunstetter. John Lund can currently be seen in the Universal International picture Just Across the Street. Featured in tonight's cast were Victor Perrin, Virginia Gregg, Joseph Kearns, John McIntyre, and Jeanette Nolan. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, is transcribed in Hollywood by Jaime Del Valle.
Every Sunday, CBS Radio's Bob Trout brings you a timely weekend roundup of world news. As a special eyewitness feature, an overseas CBS Radio News correspondent flies in to give you an up-to-the-minute account of developments on his beat. Don't miss Bob Trout's World News Roundup Sundays on the CBS Radio Network.
Welcome back. The one kind of interesting note in this episode was the meal that he got for $11.65, which doesn't sound like too much until you pull out an inflation calculator. In that case, the meal in today's money, and this was just a meal for Johnny Dollar, would be $94.62. This is what can be known as padding the expense account. This episode sounded familiar, but I didn't think it was an Edmund O'Brien episode. It wasn't. This episode, general plot line was used in a Bob Bailey episode for one of the 5-part serials. So that's something we'll get to hear how Bob Bailey does it. This episode was written by E. Jack Newman, who also wrote the last one, and he was a very talented television writer. Wrote for a lot of different series, probably best known for Police Story, but he also wrote for Twilight Zone, Sam Benedict, Wagon Train, Man with a Camera, and he was actually the writer who adapted The Long Goodbye to television. So very talented person who has a long career in television ahead of him, and we get to enjoy this sort of radio writing from E. Jack Newman. Well, we have listener comments and feedback, and we begin with a little bit of a warning. Be careful, friends. This one is addictive. The host, Adam Graham, plays several of these shows throughout their run. If you find something you like, you may be listening for a while. I find it the perfect bedtime story. And great work, mate. Keep it up. And another one, The Great Detectives of Old Time Radio, is a wonderful collection of classic radio detectives presented in a unique format. The entire surviving library of episodes is serialized on the same day each week. Adam Graham obviously does this as a labor of love, and I appreciate his commitment and introductions to each episode. And then Timothy stopped over and commented on the blog regarding our last video theater episode, the General Electric Theater presentation of Committed. Great to actually see Dan Holliday in this faithful TV adaptation of a Box 13 radio episode. The 5-minute commercial for GE's jet engines between acts was an interesting relic of the times when there was no such thing as pausing or fast-forwarding. Yeah, GE ads of the day were definitely not planned for TiVo. But it was definitely a pretty fun episode, and nice to see Box 13. The only thing they didn't do in there was actually mention the name Box 13. And that was probably because Box 13 was still airing on the radio through the continuous resyndication. But thanks so much and I'm glad you enjoyed it, Tim, and we'll have another great video out for November. All right, well, that will do it for this week. John Lund does a great performance. We will be back next week on Monday with Barrie Craig, Confidential Investigator. Tuesday, a new actor steps in to Rogues Gallery. And then join us back here on Friday for another episode of yours truly, Johnny Dollar, as we kick off our 3rd season of The Great Detectives of Old Time Radio. If you have a comment, email it to me, box13@greatdetectives.net. Give us a call, 208-991-4783. Be sure to fill out our listener survey, survey.greatdetectives.net. And remember, become a friend of ours on Facebook, facebook.com/radiodetectives. But from Boise, Idaho, this is your host, Adam Graham, signing off.